Evening. Welcome to the Select Board meeting of Tuesday, February 11th. I will take a motion to open the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is citizens' comment. Didn't know if anybody's here for citizens' comment. Amanda?
I'll sign that after. Amanda Sapaceris, 3 Danby Road. I'm here tonight as the co-chair of Save Our Stoneham, which is a ballot question committee dedicated to getting a Proposition 2.5 override passed here in Stoneham. I am here because I want to urge the Select Board to take action on the Proposition 2.5 override by voting on 3 key decisions: the amount of the override, the wording of the ballot question as a single yes or no option, and the date of the election. Right now, the lack of clarity is making it difficult for residents to engage in a meaningful discussion based on facts. I'm sure many of you have seen the spirited discussions happening on the Facebook page right now, and without an official number, rumors and speculation are filling a void, and it's creating unnecessary confusion. The community needs to know exactly what's being proposed so that we can have an informed, transparent conversation. Delaying this decision any further only makes it harder to provide accurate information to voters. I urge you to move forward tonight so we can all focus on what matters, ensuring that our town has the resources it needs to continue to be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have Ryan Foreman online.
Good evening, Ryan Foreman, 12 Windsor Road. Thank you all for being here and for continuing to take up the causes that you have before you that are so very important to our town's continued greatness, as Amanda said. I am joining Amanda in her urging of moving this process forward. I know that it's on the agenda tonight to discuss, and I hope that you have done the necessary research, gathered the necessary information, gathered the input from the town and the residents of our town, and you have all the information so that you feel comfortable moving forward, announcing a number, announcing the ballot question form, so that we can continue to talk to our neighbors, talk to our fellow residents, and continue the discussion in a meaningful way that allows us to discuss the logistics and the specifics as they affect our town so that we can move forward, so that we can advance the needs and provide the resources that our public safety officers need, our fire department needs, our DPW, every department in our town needs, and our schools need. And it would be very helpful to have that number now, have that information now, so that we can continue to educate ourselves and educate our neighbors and talk about these things in a meaningful way. That said, I would like to go one step further. I have said this a few times, and I hesitate to sound like I'm on repeat, but it is so crucially important that I think it bears repeating. I urge you, please, the number needs to be something that makes sense for the future of this town. If we pass a number that does not allow our town to invest in its future, that does not allow our town to grow, and forces us to maintain the status quo, which we know is cuts and deficit spending and making do with less over and over and over again, it will continue to handicap our ability to move forward in a way that represents the pride and the love that we have for our town. I think the number that Dennis suggested that allowed us to fund our schools, fund our departments, fund the new CBA agreement, and to do all these things in a way that meaningfully allows us to invest in our town was something north of $15 million. I know that sounds like a huge number. Troy Lau has repeatedly stated and provided the research to all of us that says that the number does not correlate to the pass rate. our town needs this injection of resources. We need this money now, and we need to invest in a way that makes sense for our future. It's not just to maintain the status quo, it's to help us move into the future with investments and planning that make sense for our town. So again, I thank all of you for your obvious demonstrated dedication to our town, the countless hours you've spent discussing these things, and I beg you all, please give us a vote, give us a ballot question, and give us an override number that makes sense for our future and allows us to build and grow and prosper, not continue the status quo. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Corinne? Dalton? Yeah. I think I can unmute you.
There we go.
There you go.
Hi,
Hi.
Corinne Dalton, 40 Linfeld Parkway. Thank you for everything you guys are doing. I echo everything that that they both just said. I wanted to talk about outreach to the townspeople. I was hoping that maybe you guys could send out a flyer or a notice or something to let the residents know what's going on. I was concerned about how few people showed up to the 2 town meetings, online or in person, and I was concerned that maybe people don't even know about it yet. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. And I was a little concerned about what Dennis said at the last meeting when he said that the people in the know were all the residents. Maybe the residents who were around 45 years ago and voting on Prop 2.5 knew that overrides would be needed and that they were part of the plan. But what percentage of that population is there at this point? Because I had no clue. I haven't been a homeowner until recently, so I fear that's an erroneous assumption. And I also wanted to say I'm involved here and now, but I've never checked the town website. I didn't even know that the town paper still existed, since the website hasn't been updated since 2020 and there's no messaging that says they're only on paper. And I don't tend to look at the notice boards unless I'm renewing my passport and I happen to be there. I don't do any social media other than Facebook, and I'm not in the habit of checking that page either for updates. So other than the robocall last Friday, how are residents informed? How do they know? How are they supposed to know that all of this is going on? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Corinne. Erin Kennedy?
No, I'm done. All right, just waiting for there we go, the audio to come up. Erin Kennedy, 2 Congress Street. Thank you all. It's sort of echoing what had been said, but I think it's important to reiterate. Thank you all for the time and consideration you put into this override discussion. I wanted to share my support for the override question to be structured as a yes or a no question, rather than giving residents too many options. I have confidence that based on all of the information that you've been reviewing, you as a select board can and should propose one override number that will fill in the town's deficit and sustain the budget moving forward. I'm concerned that if given multiple override amounts as options as part of the question, that could split the yes votes. So I'm concerned about that. And I also hope that you continue to elaborate on at least the 5-year plan going forward. I think that, that it was great opportunities to have the 2 public engagement sessions, but as Corinne said, low turnout. It's just important for everybody, those planning to vote no already, those on the fence, those in support of the override, those who don't know what's going on, to know that there is a plan going forward. So I would ask you to just, keep talking about it, keep repeating yourselves if that's what has to happen. Just get it out as much as possible. Because Stoneham, we just need to hear what's going to happen going forward with this override. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Erin. And I don't see anybody else online. So that being said, we're going to move back to our agenda. We have site plan review for 467, 469 Main Street. Do you want to read the notice, Tim?
Notice of hearing, Stoneham Select Board will hold a public hearing in accordance with the provisions of the zoning bylaws on Tuesday, February 11th, 2025 at 7 p.m. in the hearing room of the Town Hall on the petition of Matrano Family LLC to add a third dwelling unit pursuant to sections 4.17.2 and 4.17.2.1 of the zoning bylaws at the property located at 467-469 Main Street, Stoneham, Mass., owned by the Matrano Family LLC of 291 Main Street, Stoneham, Mass. Plan may be seen in the office of the building inspector.
Mr. Houghton.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and members. I represent the petitioner. We've been to the Board of Appeals and been to the Planning Board and required special permit and variances, and we're here for a site plan. And I did have a copy of the department reviews. We have agreeable to all of them. So if you want to go through them, that's fine, or if not.
No, I'm asking, where is this located? Down this way.
Just past Hancock going south.
Is there a business downstairs?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
And it's going to stay commercial, correct?
yes.
Does the board have any questions? You said you're in agreement with all the departments.
Yep, review
Comments.
requirements, yep.
Yep.
They're just using the footprint that's already there
Mhm.
and making it into
Not
the
that's
rate,
being,
they're
no.
not adding anything
No,
else.
not adding anything, no.
Anybody have any questions?
No issues in mind.
No?
Well done.
George?
No, but it's just an existing, so
Okay.
it's just going, yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan for 467 to 469 Main Street.
Second?
Roll call. Heidi?
Yes,
Tim?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Chair is in favor.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
thank you.
Madam Chair, can I get a point of personal
Yes.
privilege on speaking regarding the site plans? I just want to bring this up because obviously there's discussions about how our boards are and whatnot and how they work when it comes to site plans. Since I've been on the board in 2016, I just want to give a little review on site plans. I could go down every single one. 370 to 380 Main Street, these are in 2016. That was approved. 100 Fallon Street, approved. 45 North Street, approved. 57 Franklin Street, approved. 100 Fallon Street came back again, a different app. That was approved. 21 Manson Street, approved. And I can go down every single one. There was 2017, 2, 3, 4, 5 in 2017, 6 in 2018, 2, 4 in 2019. Total came down to, this is our 51st site plan, or my 51st site plan. People say, what can we do with these businesses and whatnot? And I don't want to go off on a tangent, I'm going to keep it short, but the problem doesn't lie with our boards. We're the last stop. It's the last set of eyes for mostly the attorneys that come in front of us. So we have not, there's one that got denied, that was 39 Pleasant Street. It came back, it got approved because it was a church. That was where the hit and run was with the old lady crossing the street. That was our concern with the safety. That's what it is. We're looking out for the safety. We're elected here to look out for the best interest of the surrounding communities, the surrounding neighbors that come in front of us. So, just the thought of this, maybe, not that it's a big deal to some, but I think it's better for us to continue. This has been here since 1980, so whether we're here or not, to have that extra set of eyes, I think it's beneficial for the abutters, because if the planning board and Board of Appeals miss something, I think it's good to have one more stop. This probably took less than 5 minutes, and I get it. It's the time with the businesses and whatnot, but I think moving forward, this just shows you the problem doesn't lie on our boards. we can do another survey on what happens after the fact. So I just wanted to get that off my chest. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, George. Moving on, we have a license for 450 Main Street.
I gotta recuse myself from this.
Okay. Legal notice for that one?
Notice of hearing. A public hearing will be held on Tuesday, February 11th, 2025 at 7 p.m. in the hearing room of Stoneham Town Hall on the application of 450 Motors at 450 Main Street, Stoneham, Mass. for a Class 2 license. Premises to be licensed as follows. The premises, 450 Main Street, office and inside storage of cars.
And Dana, how you doing?
Very well, how are you?
Good. You want to just come up and tell us what's going on?
Dana Merrick, 12 Keene Street, Stoneham. I'm sure as most people are aware that we built the 3-unit building at 450 Main Street. Primarily the building is for the town of Stoneham's ambulance service, which is in the center bays, and for the fire department in the 2 end bays for storage of fire trucks and equipment and whatnot. So with that, we had 1 bay left over, which is my bay, that small bay with the small door. And we're trying to figure out, because of the cost of everything, how we can make the least impact on the facility, because we have to make sure that the parking situation out front, the way that the ambulances, get in and out constantly, the fire trucks need to move whenever they have to, 24/7. We looked to find a way, and we felt the best way was with a used car license and storing 1 car inside, possibly 2. We have plenty of room in there. We have almost 1,800 square feet. It would allow us to do a sale here and there to help supplement the cost of the building and the taxes and everything like that. So it would be no impact outside. The biggest thing is that this is what we felt as a family was the best usage of that. Because if you went to a retail of any sort or anything like that, it's just too much impact where something could happen when those ambulances are going in and out. And, we felt this would be a nice fit. We totally finished the inside of that bay, sheetrock paint, a lot of architecture, things like that, to make it a really, really nice place for ourselves. But at the same time, as everyone knows, I'm into classic cars and whatnot, and to do 1, or 2 here or there, it allows us to make a few dollars and at the same time keep the impact down on the facility. So that's where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you.
I spoke with Cheryl Noble. Dana met with Cheryl today, and until that bay is inspected, she had a conversation with Mr. Merrick that no cars will be on site until there's a separate approval process for that, but she has no problem granting the license so that they can just get the business started. And I did have a question from a neighbor to the site. She wanted to know if there would be any lithium batteries or electric cars on site.
No, definitely not.
Good question. All right, so,
In the building, just before I forget,
Yep.
the building is fully sprinkled and alarmed and all of that. So just so
Right.
there's no- Oh, and just to add one thing, I don't know if it's the time or the place, but the reason that we're so adamant about, the outside of the building is we're in the process of trying to put together a memorial for a fallen Stoneham hero, Lieutenant Joseph Campbell, who grew up in Stoneham and was killed in action in Vietnam. And so we have some renderings that I had showed Dave and George, on what the building will look like.
of course.
We're having not only trees on the side for the 6 fallen heroes from Vietnam, from Stoneham, but then in the center, we're having a memorial with a flagpole for Lieutenant Campbell. We've spoke with the family. We've met with them multiple times. They've embraced it, and we're actually dedicating, my family really was adamant about dedicating the building and naming it for Lieutenant Joseph Campbell, because he certainly deserves it. He was awarded the Navy Cross for saving all his men in a firefight, and he refused medical aid. He was the only officer left in an entire company, and he refused to leave, and he saved all his men. It's quite a story. He was 23 years old, and sometimes people forget, and we'd like to make sure that people have the opportunity in Stoneham to realize that we have heroes here too. So that's all.
And that is a future plan, or this is?
Yes, we're working on it.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, that's something that we already have the flagpole, we already have the logistics. I'm dealing with Davis Monuments in Boston. I finally talked the best stone cutter in Barry, Vermont, to take on the project. So we're moving forward, and we're going to try to do it as quickly as possible. So it's we're actually we're touring on Thursday, if the weather is okay, some different stones in Quincy that will sort of emulate what we're trying to accomplish here. And it's a somber thing, but it's really rewarding to talk to the siblings. I graduated with his younger brother, Paul Campbell, and for myself, I didn't realize that this young man, the sacrifice that he made, and it was because he was a childhood friend of the builder of my building that told me the story, because my builder, unbeknownst to me, grew up in Stoneham on High Street. So he asked me, what we might be able to do, and we felt that this was a good fit. I've been in contact with Kevin in Veteran Affairs and Bill Goss, who's my in-law, and we're all looking forward to trying to push this forward as quickly as possible, to have something that has a meaning. People had asked me what I was going to call the building. I can't think of a better thing, I'm not that important. I don't need my name on it, so that's where we're at with it.
Well,
So I'll leave that there, you can look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate that. Dana, that's very kind, and
It's the right thing to do. This young man saved a lot of people. And it's time that we can give him something that he earned a long time ago. A lot of kids came home. I have a very close friend that was awarded the Silver Star in Vietnam. I didn't know it until 7 or 8 years ago, because he never talked about it. It's time that we talk about it, we discuss it, and we learn. And we realize this kid was a hero, a real hero. He went to Malden Catholic, he went to Boston College, graduated from BC, was a substitute teacher at Stoneham High before he got shipped out. So, you know something? For all of us, this is the least we can do for him and his family.
well, I can't thank you enough, because
My pleasure.
it's
an honor. It's an absolute honor.
and please let us know when,
We are gonna have, we're gonna have a dedication, everyone will know, everyone will be invited, and, his sister lives in England, and she's flying in. His nephew is named after him, he's in Arkansas, he's coming in. This is gonna be, he was a Marine, and, I'm from a family of Marines, so needless to say, it's a big deal for
Yes.
everyone.
Yes.
And I thank everyone, all of you, everyone, for everything that you've done for us And for us to give back a little bit, just a few feet of space, to allow someone to either drive by or walk by, because we have a lot of foot traffic there, to read a story. If you look up Lieutenant Joseph T. Campbell and read his citation for the Navy Cross, you will understand what he did, because it explains what he did. And he'll explain why so many people have jumped on board to do this.
Well, I know all of us completely appreciate it, and I wish you luck with the project. And yes,
Definitely.
please keep us posted. Back to the other stuff.
David, they voted, right?
No,
Did not vote?
We
did not
vote.
Yeah, I do have one question. I do have one question, Dana. Similar to the question about the batteries, somebody had also asked me regarding, auto repair in auto shop. It's not,
at all.
you're saying it's just to
only-
store them for sale.
Yes, it's only storage. It's not even, I would have to put a carbon monoxide system in for repair. And the biggest thing is because it is, that property, that building is zoned automotive. So if I made it, okay, so that it met the criteria for Cheryl to approve it, okay, it could be an automotive facility, but I chose against that. I chose to try to, we talked about this a great deal. We chose, what can we do to have the least impact on that property? Because I was there at 2 a.m. Sunday morning plowing to make sure the ambulances could get out, and they were getting in and out. And so this is the least impact. It will be a car or two at a time, and it's not like you have, there's no traffic,
Yeah.
It
It's
will
not a
be by
sales-
appointment only,
it's not a showroom.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No, seems fine, seems reasonable.
Does
My
somebody
concerns
like-
were what folks have brought up, was about outside. You've
Yeah.
cleared it all.
Thank you.
So would somebody like to make a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the application for the Class 2 license.
Second?
Okay, roll call. Heidi?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
And myself is in favor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Dana.
you.
Thank you. And I will keep you abreast of everything, because it's close to all of our hearts. so
Yes, please do.
Yes.
Please, let us know.
Thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Okay, those two. I'll take is George out there?
Told them we denied it.
I'll take a motion to go into liquor licensing authority.
I make a motion, we move into liquor license authority.
Second?
Roll call. Heidi?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And chair is in favor. We will return to
Select board.
select board.
Thanks for letting me come back in.
We have a special one-day liquor license for St. Patrick's School.
I believe that Lindsay Renauld is here from St. Patrick.
Who is it?
Lindsay
Lindsay?
Renauld, top row.
With their hand.
I can't see it. Oh, right there. Okay. Sorry, Lindsay.
Yeah, it's funny, you don't see the hand.
I don't see the hand.
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yep.
perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Um,
Okay.
Go ahead.
So St. Patrick's School is hosting a gala on Saturday, March 15th in the church hall to raise funds for the school. The event tickets will be sold in advance, and they are 21 plus. It's actually noted on the website as well. We plan to have up to 175 people, and which will primarily consist of parents and friends of the school. And the event will be from 6 to 9 with cocktail hour, dinner, and auction. So we're requesting the one-day liquor license with a licensed and approved bartender to have a cash bar at the event during those event hours.
Okay. Everything's in order. Eva.
everything is in order, and Chief O'Connor's comments were just to make sure there was no sale or consumption under 21, but they're not participating in the event, and that the person serving be tip certified.
Yes.
You guys are great with that, okay? I would take a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the one-day liquor license for St. Patrick's School Gala.
Second.
Roll call. Heidi?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And chair is in favor. Lindsay, you're all set.
Thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
All right, have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
You too.
Motion to exit liquor licensing authority.
Make the motion, we exit the liquor license and return to the select board.
Second.
Roll call. Heidi?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And I am in favor. Back to regular business. Approval of minutes, January 21st and 28th of 2025. Take a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes from Tuesday, January 21st and Tuesday, January 28th, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then we have two appointments to the Cultural Council. Krista Cruden and Claudia Arnoff. They both submitted applications, and I don't know if they're online. They want to, I don't see them online. Okay, well, it's appointment to the Cultural Council for both of them.
I'll make that motion, we appoint both of them to the cultural council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, ladies, for doing that.
Can I ask a quick question? Sure. Actually, David, any chance that we can get a list of what committees still have openings on them?
Sure thing.
Be a good opportunity for us to promote them.
And before we discuss the override, it's my bad, really bad. We have a proclamation for Black History Month that I forgot to read in the beginning, so if you will bear with me for a minute, I would love to read it, and then we will move on to the appointment, the override discussion. Town of Stoneham, a proclamation for Black History Month. Whereas the Stoneham Select Board takes pride in recognizing February 2025 as Black History Month, honoring the vast notable contributions that Black leaders and members of the Black community have made to our country, state, and town. And whereas in 1976, Black History Month was formally adopted to honor and affirm the importance of Black history throughout American experience and include some of the greatest, most advanced, and innovative societies from which we draw inspiration. And whereas we recognize that Black history is an American history and that Black culture stories, triumphs, are at the core of who we are as a nation. And whereas Stoneham is a community that values diversity and inclusion and is committed to equal rights and opportunities for its Black residents and is dedicated to fostering the acceptance of all citizens. And whereas Stoneham recognizes the important contributions of Black residents of the town's history, culture, economy, and civic life. And whereas we affirm our support for Black residents and stand with them to protect their civil rights and ability to live freely without fear, and to continue our efforts to create a world that is more just, equitable, and prosperous for all. Now therefore it be resolved that we, the Stoneham Select Board, do hereby recognize February 2025 as Black History Month, and urge our citizens to recognize the contributions made by members of the Black community and the importance of this month. Given to the Select Board in the Town of Stoneham, this 11th day of February 2025. So, thank you. Okay, we can go back to the override discussion. I don't know if y'all want me to start, or Dennis, do you want to start?
Sure, I can start, if that's the will.
Excuse me.
I guess I can just start with a little bit of commentary. We have been doing this for a long time. And we are at the point where we need to make a decision for the communities. You heard, for the community, you heard from members over the past several weeks of wanting to move this forward. The override, to me, is an investment in our community, and there is no silver bullet to fix these things. And I think we, at least we and our other boards and residents, are aware of the situation we are in. So I think, to maintain our property values and to invest in our own resources, this is something we have to look at. This conversation is probably going to be hard, but this board is elected to be leaders and listen and then take action. So we are here to take action tonight. So I'll turn it over to Dennis.
So I'll just say a couple quick things. I think I've been here 6 years, and this is probably the hardest decision that this board's had to make in the 6 years I've been here. So I just ask that the people who are watching at home understand that this board has spent the last 6 years looking at this issue, particularly the last 18 months, even more rigorously the past 6 months, and most importantly, over the past 2 months. The plan was always to have the public engagement session, to hear feedback from residents, to provide residents the opportunity to provide comment, and I believe this board has done that. And they've listened to the other boards in town regarding their concerns. As you know, you don't have to make the decision today, so if you don't feel like you have the information, we're happy to go back and provide you more clarity. Even as of late as Saturday afternoon, I felt like there was a shift in the dialogue in that public hearing that maybe we need to refine some of these things, but I think you're really now in a narrow window of ranges that you're probably looking at and considerations. I spoke to Chairwoman Parker after hearing feedback about people wanting us, the select board, to decide sooner rather than later, and maybe it ends up being a quick virtual meeting to finalize any of the discussion. So I just want to make sure everyone knows at home that we're taking even those comments extremely seriously. So I'm just going to run through where I think we're at based off of the comments, and maybe it will help guide your discussion in terms of providing feedback or talk about how you guys want to handle it going forward. So I think one of the first conversations you should probably have is this single question versus pyramid question. We've talked about there's a baseline need, which is in that $9.1, $9.2 million range, which I'll run through these various scenarios, and we can run through it all and then come back to this. But there's the menu option, and Dave, I'll provide you guys the piece of paper here. There's the menu option was, do you want to fund this or do you want to fund that? There's the pyramid option, do you want to fund this, and do you want to fund this plus these other things? Or there's the single override question. I've drafted an example of the single override question based off of some of the feedback we've heard. And you could even take this and add a pyramid if you wanted to, but this is probably the cleanest, most appropriate way to phrase the single override question. I can run through the scenarios and then come back to this, but even if you just decided it's going to be a single question, that might be helpful for everyone going forward. I'm not going to go through 50 slides. I'm actually kind of tired of hearing myself talk at this point. When we talk about level service, these are the positions on the town side, and some of the adjustments that we're trying to make up in FY26. So if it fails, these are the types of things that are going. These are the types of things the school department is considering. This is a continuation of some of the items that are being considered at the school department. This is the number that was presented. There is still some collective bargaining considerations, which we've tried to add some of that into this level service number that we've been floating around. We have ticked it up a little bit to 9.2 based off of even some information we've learned in the last 48 hours regarding property insurance and Northeast Metro Tech charges. So we've always talked about this number, so hopefully this type of number is not a surprise on the what I've been calling the level service piece. So does anyone have any questions about just this, where we are, how we got to this number? I think you guys have seen it and heard it for the nth time.
We've lived it.
Yep. At the end of the last engagement session, the group that was present started inserting this piece of the conversation into the dialogue, which was these were proposed cuts from previous years that were going to continue to not be funded. I reached out to the superintendent. We think this amounts to about $2.5 million in the first year. I've inserted this red diagonal bar across because, you know, the school committee still needs the flexibility of maybe these are the things that were cut in the past, but maybe they're not the priority when you're going into the next fiscal year. There's a number of competing priorities and the environment's changed. But if there is a sense in the community or amongst the select board that there needs to be an additional amount of money to help restore some of these items / grow the school department additionally above the level service amount, this is an estimate that we've put forward with the understanding that we don't want to be the ones to say we're going to be adding point FTE for any of these particular uses. So I just wanted to use it as an example. These are the items that we've gone through several times in terms of police department requests, public works department requests, fire department requests. So the next slide is a summation of the full, I don't want to say it's full because it's a summation of the things that we've talked about in the most recent public engagement sessions and compiling all those together. And adding some growth factors. So if we added the town ads, I don't know why this red looks so bad on this screen, but the town ads plus the school ads changes the number to 14.6 million. And it shouldn't necessarily be a surprise because we've said in the public engagement sessions that the town ads in total would be around 2 million. Now we're seeing the school ads just from that one slide being an additional 2.5 million, and that is leading to 14.6 million. Again, there are other needs. It could go even higher. I'm just trying to map through the conversations we've had. What I'm trying to show on this slide is you could not fully fund all of those requests. You could choose a round number like $1 million for the town in the first year or $2 million for the schools in the first year. And in that example, it would lead to 13.1 million if you funded $1 million of the town asks and $2 million of the school asks. And really the options start becoming infinite once we go beyond the 14 million. So that's just how I've digested the previous rounds of meetings. I don't know how you've digested them. We haven't really talked about it, so again, just as a reminder, 10 million is around $1,200, 12.5 million is around $1,400, and 15 is around $1,700 on an average single-family home. We just showed this for those who are trying to calculate what the value of their house might be. You would just multiply it by how many X hundreds of thousands of dollars your home is assessed at in the assessor's office, not market value or what Zillow says. The deadline's February 28th, just as a reminder, for notifying the clerk. But that is just how I've kind of digested it, and I'm willing to take any feedback or direction.
Okay,
Next question.
sure, okay.
Dennis, just a point of clarification. When you are coming up to the 14.6, the additional town things that are being met are personnel for fire, police, and DPW.
Those
Just
slides
personnel for them, right? So
yeah,
not including things that we know we need, like a new, reassessing our fire station.
right. That is personnel, and we should talk a little bit about this because we're struggling with the operating budget, right? So we're trying to figure out how to make the operating budget going forward for 4 or 5 years sustainable. And that's sort of the endeavor that we're pursuing. What some of this does, though, is it does provide flexibility intrinsically for the capital committee and the town to tap into other resources, whether there's flexibility in year 1 to year 4 or utilizing the free cash or building in more debt into our debt schedule because there's more flexibility in the earlier years. So, with
Once you reach the 5-year, you're like at the max for,
right. So if you wanted to have a conversation about the fire station at some point, we could handle it the same way we handled the high school project. Was we funded within the town's budget $700,000 to do an initial study, and then brought the project forward to the town voters. But the town funded that first $700,000, and it's always because of that one-time cost piece of it. It does. We did add some small supplies and services to each of these departments, but not substantial. Maybe we should, we could consider increasing those more, if that's the type of thing you're talking about.
So if we were able to actually get all of the personnel that we needed across those 3 departments, do we have any idea what that bottom line would be in terms of the overtime that we are paying right now because we don't have enough bodies, right? Like, that's built into their budget today, right?
Right, so I would say the police one's a little different because they're 24/7, right? And when you have someone who calls out sick an hour before a shift starts, they do have the ability to force people onto overtime, right? So you have the regular patrol piece. With the fire department, you can start talking about the number of when do you call, what he calls as the callback, right? You're adding a lieutenant, you're adding a firefighter, and that's when he talks about you run 10 down to 8, or you run, 11 down to 9, and that ends up being a future conversation.
I mean, I know it's not going to go away completely, right? But do we have some idea, just in terms of,
I would say
like,
I should probably phrase this slightly different. I'm probably not. I think our overtime has been running low for so many years that any potential savings will just be getting the town to where it should be anyways. So it's not like we're gonna be saving money on overtime. We'll be having some flexibility that would allow us to, when we do need the overtime, not be straining the other budget because the overtime's being expended so much.
It seems to me like we have a number of places where we just don't have adequate staffing already. Like if we're running down to 8 at the fire department, it's not even like overtime is solving that problem. Like we just need more people on that shift. And so they're not actually replacing any overtime spending right then and there because we're still at, like, we're going from 8 to 9 or 8 to 10, and you're just adding just pure new people hours, man hours to spend. But it's good man hours. I mean, it's like you'd rather have 9 or 10 people on the fire trucks coming up and showing up at your house. And that's, I think, was part of the solution here was you get a better service out of this at the end of the day, because we're uncomfortable, or I'm uncomfortable with sort of the level of manning on some of these conversations we've had. And I wish there was savings that would help us in this, but I feel like it's plugging some of the holes, and I don't know if that's a savings thing at this point.
And even with something like the sidewalk crew, what that does is it allows us to attack a huge need in town, across town, but we still probably use contractors here and there for larger stretches of sidewalk, or we would just be diverting those resources from sidewalks to more streets. It wouldn't necessarily be a savings because people want us fixing the street and want us fixing more sidewalks. So some of these savings proposals are more, are we providing the service people want?
I think, Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
can you go to either one, the fire or the police? Please. Deputy Chief right there. So I talked to both chiefs because I wanted to bounce these things off of them because I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. It's just giving my opinion. This is what the discussion is going to be about. So when I see the deputy chief's positions in both departments, I am strongly against that because I think they can delegate to the captains and the lieutenants. Only because if you look at the numbers, with the population growing, I think you're better off having more people out on the street to answer the calls. So I'd rather see, I know you're adding 2 more patrol officers. I know it's almost like a game of chess, but you look at those numbers and the same with the fire. If not, then add maybe 1 more patrolman and then give a few more workers to the DPW that are actually, you hear the numbers, how many guys are out there plowing. I know there's other subcontractors that just come in there, but I think if we're going to start dissecting numbers, I don't think we need more management. I'd rather see line officers and more personnel in the DPW. That's just my opinion.
Since we're on that topic, I don't agree with that. I really strongly, I like, if we were not putting line officers on, I would agree that line officers are more important, and they are more important. We heard that from the chief. His patrol division is his most important division. But there are line people going into all these departments. I think I like that there are command staff getting added in the fire department, and I like that there is 1 additional top-level management position in both those departments. There is only 1, I believe, Dennis, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's only literally 1 non-union management employee in both of those departments right now, and that is the chief. And I think it's important that they have a second person there who is oversight over the whole thing. I think there are a number of duties that are sort of a critical management type of duty that it would be good to be able to share among a pair of people. I realize it's an expensive position, and yes, it could go towards other line officers, but I just don't think 2 is too much to ask for in these departments.
I think I'm not going to go back and forth, but I think when you hear about the burnout with overtime and stuff, and I'm just thinking of these apartments, there's 259 more on Franklin Street, 276 at the end of Maple. something like that. And then there's talk about Marjam and all that stuff being developed. I'm just looking at how many more calls they're gonna probably be going to in these apartment complexes and leaving less patrolmen out on the street. That was my concern, and more safety, I think, when it comes to that stuff.
Madam Chair, may I make a comment? So I will plus one what Tim was saying, primarily because we have heard from both the police chief and the fire chief that they both feel that really to be able to run their departments as effectively as they would like to, they need that second deputy chief. I honestly don't think that the addition of a deputy chief will change the way that our current chiefs ensure that the needs of the community are continuing to be met, even if it means they're the ones that are, on calls and going out and helping whatever the community needs, right? I mean, they've always been willing to do that. And I don't think a deputy chief is going to stop that, but it's going to help them be able to focus on the areas that they don't get the opportunity to today, because they are doing so much of that, for lack of a better term, that grunt work, right?
I get it. But when I see those numbers, and I'm just thinking of, when I see a deputy chief at 170 and then two patrolmen at 123, and there's, 46 and change, $46,000 in between them. It's just a lot of money, it seems like. I'm just looking at it as.
Just a point of clarification,
I get it.
these aren't ordered in their priority list. I think even Chief O'Connor, I think he was saying he'd prefer 2 patrol officers and then and a dispatcher, then a deputy.
They both said that's at the bottom of their list, I get it.
Right.
But when you see the numbers, that's my thing. That's all. I get it.
We've had this conversation with every position that we've had to fill over the last 6 years, right? Because we are, always known for being on the bottom of every pay scale. And we have been making, very concerted efforts across all of our departments in town, right, to bring people up to a competitive amount. And we can't stop doing that, because then we're going to stop getting qualified candidates.
I'll chime in. I don't think that this is I shouldn't say that. This is the discussion. It's about the bottom line, right? It's about $594 for the police department, $594,000 for the police department. I think we have department heads that will make these decisions over the next couple years. Providing this override passes, which I hope it does, I think it gives time for a little bit of restructuring, right? So, like you just said, it might not be the deputy chief for the police department right away. It might be the 2 patrol officers. Hey, wait a minute, maybe it's 4 police officers. So I feel like we probably shouldn't nitpick over the titles so much. And I'm not saying you guys are nitpicking. Was a bad word. I'm saying, I think that our focus, the select board, is to hopefully get this override on the ballot, get it passed, and then this discussion happens.
Goes on forever from here.
No, but what I'm saying is just what you just said. Maybe it's not a deputy chief that's really the priority in year 1, in year 2. Maybe that's year 3 or year 5. So, yes, I know it goes on forever. I think these numbers are really important to look at, and for me, it's about growing these departments that have waited for so long. You all heard it. their statements are all online, people can watch them. It's, one of the person who spoke the other day said, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that our staff levels are these low. And I completely appreciate everything that these workers do, because they always are going to show up for us. It's time for us to show up for them. So when we talk about the positions, I feel like that's more Dennis and the chiefs and the directors to kind of figure out how they want to see that. I guarantee you, if we pass this override, we're getting more officers, we're getting more laborers, we're getting more firefighters. And that, to me, is paramount. I just think there might be a little bit of leeway in how that all gets decided. And maybe it should be discussed here, and maybe the department head should know how the select board feels. But I do think that it's important for us to kind of really figure out what we're asking and what we're asking for, or how we're asking, right?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna put a number out there and then we can start the conversation.
I was just gonna say, so.
Don't do it yet, don't do it yet.
All right, you guys
the
each write it down and open it up.
I know, right?
And we'll just take the average.
No, but before you say that number, I want to say, I was looking at some old videos, meetings, and what this town really needs is $25 million. We are not talking about that. We are talking about just getting the town to where it needs to be and be good for 5-10 years. Like this, we're not here to be like, oh, we're, this great affluent community and we want to do all this fun stuff. We're talking about laborers, firefighters, police officers, senior center, library. Like, these are the important things that make up our town. And so I just wanted to get that big number out there first before you say whatever number you think. Go for it, Heidi.
Okay. I would propose a $13 million override ballot question.
So I wrote down, it was the second one at 12.5. When you did it, I know it's a $500,000 difference. Just keeping it probably under the teen, I get it. And what was said at that discussion on Saturday, I thought was nice, when Maria said we are a bedroom community. And we are. I mean, we've been arguing about our commercial space for how many years? And we can't, we can only do so much to bring them here. If we're not bringing in commercial and commercial doesn't want to come here, it's up to the residents, because that's why we moved here. We moved here because of, some people don't want commercial space in their town. But if we don't want that, then we're going to have to pay for it, unfortunately. So I think I'm throwing that, I'm doing the 12.5, keep it under 13. It's just, if not, I'll agree with you on 13. It's not much, it's a difference, but.
I said 13 because I think if we looked at the school, right, and to meet their current budget and potentially bring back some services, or, have that extra money to do the additional priority things, if you figure that that's about $6.5 million, then the 13 brings us to $6.5 million for the government side as well, in our public safety and the things that we need to do here. So it just seems like it's a good, we have worked over the last 8 years to really say we are one whole town government. We aren't, these boards fighting against these boards. And I think that being able to say that we're going to put a number out there that is going to equitably support both sides is another example of us committing to working together.
Piggybacking on that, and I agree with that, and I also agree with having just one number instead of multiple,
Yep.
because that's where the division starts. We've worked hard to bridge
I think
that
we
gap,
have
so.
one number and we have just the
Yep.
yes or no on this number.
And things might change because I know the delegation said that they have a bill in front regarding the charter, and I know the charter's at 9%, and they proposed 5%. The bill that we worked on was 2.5%. So even if we went at 5, the only thing that I would like to add, and if we could publicly ask them to support or change their bill, because I know the bill's changed, but coming from the delegation opposed to us as a tri-board, might be better if we changed. I know we were looking at 2.5 and they said 5, but if we could look at, because I didn't get an answer yet, and I know the charter schools after October 15th, they keep the whole, I'm under the impression that they keep the money. And so they're only in school for like a month and a couple days, and they keep the whole, it should be prorated. So if they could add that in to the bill, in a public meeting, asking the delegation to put that in, adding it on to their bill instead of us having a tri-board, it'd go a long way, I think. And those numbers hopefully would change, because then instead of the 3.4 million that they're dishing out, hopefully those numbers will come down. So, and I getting more money for the schools. I understand that, because again, I don't want to, that's on them. They have a lot to deal with all the state mandated stuff, so.
I'm just going to say two things. For those online that have your hand raised, I see you. We'll get to you as soon as the select board's done with their conversation, so just hang tight. You know, that 9.1 is just level funding the town. So for me, that number is off the table. I think, you know, in these conversations, as tri-board, we know, you know, the schools are the big elephant in the room, but it's time for the town side to be supported. And I don't know what the school committee is going to come back with. They're still going to have to make cuts. They're still going to have to make cuts. They're not getting the whole pie, right? Because we are going to be equitable to this side of the house. I'm not pitting against each other. I'm just saying that there are priorities, at least for me, on the town side. But I agree with your comment about charter schools.
And that's all I'm going to bring it up. I know I keep bringing it up, but if they're saying they're putting the bill through, I'd just rather add that on publicly so they know where we are coming from. And I don't want to step on the school committee's toes, but that number for some reason, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. They don't have these meetings. They're not in these type of meetings. It's a gravy train for them. They're not looking for cuts or anything else. They're just, Jimmy's not keeping up. See you later. Why don't you go back to your own town and deal with it? That to me is, and if it's being accepted at the state level and they don't want to change it, seriously, shame on them, because it just doesn't make sense.
I think what this override does too is gives everybody a little bit of breathing room to say, okay, you know, we finally get to do some real hard work and figure out these budgets and figure out the direction all these departments want to go in. And I think, unfortunately, the school department still has a lot of work to do, and they're still going to, you know, do what they have to do for their budget. But the good side is that we're going to move forward and get some firefighters and get some laborers for DPW and the stuff that we've been holding back for a long time. And again, I don't mean to disregard the school, but this override is town heavy for me. And I will agree with you both. One question, one number. yes or no.
So, Dennis, can you go over to the slide that had the total that was level plus town?
So,
This includes school, but school's roughly around $3 million, maybe
Yes.
2.8 if you do the.
yeah,
this-
so we
yeah.
took that, if you try to follow
Okay.
along, in FY '26, we plugged in this 2.567 number based off of
Yeah,
the conversation plus the feedback I got about the superintendent and the school.
yeah. and
So
that-
they could, it would give them some flexibility for some additional choices. The town, over the 4 years, we took the sum of all three of those sheets and projected it out to get to the 1.994, which in our previous public meetings and listening sessions, we had that it was going to be around $2 million in that 4-year period. And so what we did, just for discussion purposes on the last one, if we're talking in this type of ranges, what we did was we said we'll fund an additional $1 million of town. Then we'll fund an additional $2 million of town, so not the 2.5. And really, honestly, this was just paper napkin it to have people an understanding that, the school budget is approximately twice the size of the town budget.
So I just think so this is sort of piggybacking off of a couple of earlier comments. I agree with Ramey's comment that, in my mind, the town, I want a town-heavy weighting here. I think the town is gasping for breath. We have, and I understand why, and I think it's very reasonable, we have prioritized when we've had issues and we've had cuts, we've prioritized preserving school funding. And it's fully understandable. We put our children first. But one of the things that we've talked about trying to emphasize here is, can we, for this round, try to emphasize restoration on the town side? And so I want to really try to stick to that. But it doesn't mean that I want to leave them, I don't want to leave them at level. I like the idea, Heidi, you said it, of some equitable restoration. And so I am very supportive of giving the departments, and I hear your comment, Ramey, about, we don't need to get into the nitty-gritty about what the departments do with their specific roles, but giving them that space. If police needs $500,000 or $600,000, and that's what was on that sheet, and that will give them the space to make the restorations that they deem is going to improve the department, and we saw one example of the things that they can do, that all seems reasonable to me. I think that's a great idea. I want to sort of maximize their space to improve, because where they are now is just a place where a lot of improvement can be made. But I don't want to leave the school without also some ability to make improvements. Their past 2 years have been 2 years of real struggle, especially last year. There was a reason that we heard from a lot of folks, like, please do an override right now, because what they had to do last year was really hard. And so I'm not saying that we can get to $15 million to solve last year and the year before's struggle of the schools, but can we do a little bit? And so, $13 million seems pretty reasonable to me. That gets you a really strong town restoration, gets you the town with real improvement, and then sort of puts a down payment on helping out the school and says, let's see where we need to go after that. And so I like making a really strong effort on the town side, but also making sure the school gets some improvement as well. But keeping that number, 13 million seems like a reasonable number to me. As you I looked at that tax number as you get towards 15, seems kind of scary. And I agree with I know folks have been saying it, one and done. It's a yes or no. One of the things that I keep reminding myself, and we've been hearing, is tell us what the town needs, and then let us make the choice. And so what I think the town needs is it needs to make improvements on the town side, and it needs to start a restoration on the school side. And that's what I think that number would do.
I mean, George, sorry. Sorry. I was looking at.
No. I think I almost forget what I was gonna say. Where was I gonna go with the number? Oh, with the departments. Shoot. It was dealing with the number, so I would agree with the 13 if that's the number that we're gonna put forward. With coming back to the discussion wise, having those two open discussions and the people that feel strongly opposed to it, I kind of wish they would say it or have shown up, because that way, I mean, we're trying to find solutions. We're here, the three boards have worked together to try to find solutions. And if it's easy to sit back and just say, no, I'm not going to go for it because you guys are mismanaging. Well, if we had that feedback, and we've had department heads come in front of us and explain everything to a T, we'd love to, still like to hear from them who's disagreeing. But if there is a way, if there's any type of feedback you can get for some type of solution, it would be helpful as well. But I think we've kind of lived underneath each stone here, so.
I want to say something too, that, you know, with regard to this override, Dennis, you said it right when you started, you know, you've been here for 6 years, and we've been looking at these negative numbers for 6 years. And I just want to say, like, COVID kind of saved us for a little bit longer, right? We got $7 million, and we were able to offset either capital purchases or more money invested in the sidewalks or whatever. We were saved. We got a breather for a minute, and now we are really here. We are really, we could have been there 4 years ago.
I would also say that we made corrections in that FY21 budget that also like put us on a path for a couple of years, because we all collectively said there's a ton of uncertainty. We need to make cuts and adjustments here.
Yep.
And what it did was it bought us a little bit of time.
Yep. And I think the assumption on all of our parts was that at some point things were going to get back to some sense of normal, but that has just not happened, right? Everything has just continued to increase. And I totally agree with you, Ramey. I mean, we were really lucky with the money that we got, both from the state and federally, that let us be able to plug a lot of those holes, but that faucet is turned off now, right? I mean, it's just not there. So now it is up to us.
And we didn't use the ARPA for really any ongoing operating. We stayed lean on that whole thing.
Yeah, you couldn't use it for operations.
no.
Yeah.
And actually, that's a good point, because there is one other thing that I want to comment on, because I think that those are the two things that I've been hearing the most are, why did we not know that how did we not see this coming? And I think, like you said, we've been talking about this for 5 years. We've seen it coming. We've been poking plugging all the holes that we can, and we just can't do that anymore. And then another thing that I've heard going around a lot is, well, you had $3 million to buy the Arnold House, right? Where's that $3 million? Folks, remember, when we put the Arnold House purchase out before the town, we had said it was going to be designated some of that ARPA money, some of that free cash to be able to make up that amount. When the town decided we did not want to buy it, we then took those ARPA funds and took that free cash and put them into other places that we heard from the community they deemed priority, right? We did more money into streets and sidewalks, more money into the maintenance of our buildings. So it's not like there was this lovely pot of $3 million that's still sitting out there somewhere.
I would just say the other thing about that narrative is we didn't buy the Arnold House.
Yep.
We just didn't buy it, so
We didn't buy
you
it,
can.
Yep.
We went through our due diligence.
Yep. We put it in front of the
took-
town.
We took consideration in the value and how much it was gonna cost us. We
Yep.
had a very public process. We had a recommendation from a committee. We did not buy the thing.
So that's over.
It's over.
If it's all right with the board, I have a couple raised hands online. Want to take that?
I would try to make sure that
Yep,
comments are
I'm going to
written
give him the
before.
2-minute spiel. Anybody in the room that would like to say anything? Nope. Okay.
Other people that have talked.
I'm going to go to John Cummings. I'm going to unmute you.
Hi, John Cummings, 81 Summer Street. So I'm going to ramble for a minute, and I apologize. But my understanding of the situation is that Proposition 2.5 has kind of restricted Stoneham's ability to raise income because we're a bedroom community to roughly the 2.5%. And there's been a lot of discussions here on how to optimize that funding and how to optimize everything we're spending. But what I'm curious about is, and the 13 million has been thrown out a few times, but how does that, if we were to do this override, how would we compare to surrounding communities that are comparative? And basically, sorry, I'm rambling and I lost my train of thought, but basically, yeah, so if we were to do this override, how would we compare to other communities around us, really?
I guess,
I have my other
yeah,
slides towards
Dennis
the back.
can kind of tap into that.
If you just give me a second.
Thanks, John.
Oh, man. So this is FY24, so you have to just remember we're sitting in FY25. On this one, for 24, we were around 7,500. I can tell you that some of these towns are talking about overrides or have already, so like Melrose is already talking about an override. North Reading just went and asked for a $10 million override. You have us. Winthrop is also in the middle of an override conversation. So this slide next year could be fundamentally different. And I have to double check. Danvers might start having that conversation soon as well. But then you have North Reading for single family at 10,000, Reading single family at 10,000, Belmont at 17. So we're at 7,500 on this slide. And I think, John, you had previously talked about the tax rates, both residential and commercial. Stoneham is at around, in fiscal year 23, I should just point out, it was 1110 for residential, 21 for commercial. Reading was 1259 residential, 13 for commercial. Wakefield was 1173 residential, 22 for commercial. So, for similar communities, we're in those types of ranges, but they're also dealing with the same issues we're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add to that on that slide, Wilmington is like the closest to us, and they're like $300 more in their taxes than we are. And I don't want to compare us to other towns. But Stoneham has never passed an override. And a lot of those towns have. So, I'm going to take the next question. And John, I'll come back to you. Ryan. 2 minutes, Ryan.
That's fine this time. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you. It does seem like you all have spent a lot of time and put a lot of energy into thinking about this. And I want to be very upfront about thanking you all for that. My first question is for Dennis, and I would just like an explanation or a breakdown. The slide that you keep showing that I think is what me and others have been asking for, that shows the 14.6 number. Can you explain what the difference to the average home in Stoneham is between $14.6 million and the $13 million number that's being thrown around?
All right.
My concern,
So-
and again, I only have 2 minutes, so if this doesn't count against me, I'll
All right. If the chairwoman allows it. I just couldn't tell where the select board was going, so I couldn't run every single scenario. But 12 and a half was going to be around $1,400, almost $1,500, and 15 is around $1,700 change. Can you see this slide?
I can, thank you
Yeah.
very much. So we're talking about approximately $200 per year to the average home in Stoneham. That doesn't even break down to $20 a month. And instead of giving the departments what the department heads have come here and told you over and over again we need to restore that, it seems to me, and again, I'm on the outside of this conversation looking in, it seems that we've arbitrarily just picked 13 because it sounds even and cool. And again, I'm not minimizing the effort that you've put into this, but I haven't heard a justification why we're picking 13 instead of the number that the town administrator is demonstrating, again, not his opinion, but gathering the facts from the department heads of what we need. All three of you that have spoken on this, and I can't wait to hear from the other members of the select board, but you've all referenced like this is a good start. This is a good down payment, I think is what Tim said a moment ago. And I think the comment was this time. If we do an override now, and it's any one of these three numbers that's being talked about, there may not be a next time. I urge you to consider the fact there may not be a next time. This is all we can get for a very long time, potentially, given the appetite this town has had. And I beg you, let's just do it once, rip the Band-Aid off, give our town departments what we need, do the 14.6. There is almost no difference to the taxpayer, which is what people really care about, and it restores the services that every department head has told you they need. Please, pick a number that makes sense based on the numbers, pick a number that makes sense based on what we've heard and the information in front of you, and I understand the appeal of a round number, and you're doing a great job by saying one vote, yes or no, one number, but that number needs to make sense for us to be able to explain it to our town. And that number is 14.6, and we have it right in front of us. There doesn't seem to be any reason for justifying deviating from that number and going lower. I beg you, please just give us the number that the town administrator on behalf of the department head says we need. There's no reason to save $20 a month if we're talking about these big numbers. For Stoneham's sake and for our schools and for our departments, I just do the 14.6 now and let's grow our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. I will make a comment back to you on that, and I'll just say this. The select board, my peers, my neighbors, the people we have raised our children with, I think it's a very hard conversation because there are people who this is going to be hard on. And I think, for me personally, believe me, I would love to have $20 million on the ballot. But I think when I think about my neighbors and the families, and not necessarily all elders, but this is going to be a hit to some people in this community. And even though our demographics have changed and there are new families, young families, the income levels have changed in the town of Stoneham, there are still people here that we need to consider and that we want to support. So, that's just my opinion on the 14.6. I love that number, but I don't know if it's realistic for everybody. So, I'm going to go back to John Cummings. Go ahead, John.
Thank you very much. Basically what I'm trying to get at is these numbers are being thrown out. If you look at social media and stuff, it seems like there's a perception of mismanagement. But I get the feeling that with these numbers that we're talking about, it gets us comparable to where communities around us want to be or are and where we want to be. So it's kind of getting us to that average where I think all surrounding communities need to be at. Is that true?
I honestly, I can't speak for the other communities. I can only speak for Stoneham. You know, that was not part of our narrative. Like, we didn't say, well, what is Melrose doing? What is Winchester doing? What is Wakefield doing? We're just talking Stoneham-centric.
Yeah, that's just a matter of perspective, which is probably hard for us to say. All I can tell you is that Winchester went for a $10 million override, Melrose went for a significant override, North Reading went for a significant override, Winthrop went for a significant override. The challenges that we are facing as Stoneham is not unique, really, no matter how much their property tax value is, because it's really just the year-over-year increase that we've seen in the last 3 years between inflation, special education costs, and health insurance.
And quite honestly, I hope and I pray that the state and the federal government figure out what the heck they're doing. Because in my mind, and it makes me so mad, you can probably hear it in my voice, the unfunded mandates, the special needs costs, the charter schools, the transportation costs, all things that are out of our reach are what's killing our budget. Now, I hope and I pray over the next couple of years, this override pushes our town to a new level, right? A new Stoneham. And that they can figure out, guess what? We're going to give Stoneham $10 million more because of whatever has been figured out. Guess what? We can lower the taxes. We can go back. We can figure it out. I just think that there is nothing left for us to do but then to move forward. And I'm sorry if I'm getting so heated, but I'm going to go to Mary Shannon.
Thanks, Ramey. Mary Shannon, 34 Maple. I just wanted, and I'm the last person to challenge people's math in public, but I did want to just make sure that we're not getting our numbers wrong. I believe Ryan mentioned something about the cost to families being, something like about $20 a month. And I just want to make sure that we're being really transparent about what the month-to-month cost would be. Obviously, that's going to be dependent on property taxes and home size and all of that. But my figures put it closer to, $100 to $150 a month for your average single family in town. Can somebody who's better at math than I am confirm
I don't want
which
to
end of the
speak.
scale?
Yeah, Ryan. I'm not going to speak for Ryan, but I would assume what he was talking about was the difference between $13 million and $14.6 million is $20 a month.
So the difference between those two numbers
Yes.
is where that $20 a month
Right,
was coming
right,
from.
right. And the math you're
Okay.
doing is from 0 to 13 or 0 to 14 million.
Right. And okay, and that's I just think that's an important clarification, is because when we start with the messaging around this, I think the first question out of everybody's mouth is going to be, well, what does it really cost me? And so I know there's a formula to it. I just want to make sure that we're being really careful to not make it more confusing than it has to be, because it's going to have to be a very distilled message for it not to be misconstrued.
Yeah, agree. Thank you, Mary Shannon.
Thanks, Mary.
Jessica Ziegler.
Can I just say one-
Yep,
can I just say
Jessica,
one
hold
thing?
on 1 second, please.
So when you hear these numbers and whatnot, and then if you start breaking it down, how much it would cost, Martha Buckley was a very strong person when we were going for that override, and if you listen to the math on a $3 million override and what that was going to cost people, and these are the things you can put it in that type of scenario, but it's amazing. It doesn't matter. I mean, it was down to a cup of coffee.
Mm.
Or something like that per day, or it was something less, and back then I don't think there was any, what's that?
Pizza a month?
A pizza a month. Like, you hear these different scenarios, and we get it. But keep in mind, it was said, I think Ramey said it that Saturday, we built a new school, the timing, it was Maria. The timing of the school, and then the costs, we had to go back and ask for money, and COVID, it's just all these things compound. So when we hear it from Like, I hear it from my friends, George, good luck, and I'm getting lit up. I'm saying, you guys have no idea. It's, if you saw the numbers, and then you try to explain it to them, you can talk to you blue in the face to them. It's just the number, that's why I wanted to keep it under, you could say 14.6, 15 million. I didn't want to hear a teen. I'd rather do 12.9, just so you don't hear that teen number after all the numbers that we put up, that's all. That's how we have to look at it, because we've been dealing with this for so long, and we just want to put the right number up there for the whole town, that's all.
Yeah, can I actually add on to what you were just saying, George? I do think that there is, right, we've been talking for months about how, we do less, we do more with less, right? We're always the most frugal when it comes to our own expenses. We have been making positive strides in the right direction through our fiscal policies and in being consistent, but not trying to overachieve on any of those directions, right? Our goal is move forward, smaller steps, and we're going to get there, and we're going to be stronger as the town. And I do believe that by choosing a number that is going to come out at $1,500 or less, for each resident is an easier conversation to have than, nope, we're just going to blow it all up and we're going to get everything that we ever wanted. That's not how we work. We have never worked that way. I think it is up to us to say, we know what we need to do to be able to move forward, and we need to be realistic about what the town is going to buy into.
It's a matter of trust and transparency. We are being very transparent as we possibly can. We're not shooting for the moon because we don't know what's up there. All right, go ahead, Jessica. Do I have to, I gotta ask you, sorry. There you go.
Okay, thank you. You can hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Remy, I just wanted to jump in and say I really appreciate the point you made about sort of the neighbors, your neighbors and the folks you've raised kids in this town with, and folks who this would be really hard on if it passed. I also just want to make sure that we're including in that conversation the folks that this would be really hard on if it didn't pass, right? So all of the folks who work for all of the departments that we've been talking about, our firefighters, our police, public works, also all of the teachers and staff in our school system and all of the families that use the school system. So I think I just want to make sure that we're acknowledging, yes, there are people that this would be hard on if it passed, but there are also so many people in this town that it would be very, very hard on if it didn't pass. So that's just me throwing that into the conversation and hoping that the higher of the numbers that are being discussed tonight are really seriously considered. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very, very good point. Marcy.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, thank you guys so much. So I'm just going to piggyback off of what Jessica said, which is like, I feel like I've said this a lot, but I am one of those people in the community that this is going to be hard on. Like, I have a very fixed budget, and it will be tough. But I want to make sure that the number is high enough that we're not back here again in 5 years talking about these same kinds of cuts and things that we're talking about now. I'm willing to do whatever I have to do individually for this override to get the larger number passed so that we can get the things that we need so we don't have to be here having these discussions again. And I guess I just wanted to piggyback off of Jessica and just say, yeah, like, I would 100% be in support of this larger number.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that, Marcy.
Raymond.
Sorry, Amanda, I'm sorry. Come on up. It's hard to do this and...
I know, thank you. I am so appreciative of everybody on this board who's been listening to me talk for over a year now about how this needs to get on a ballot. And so thank you for finally bringing this forward, and I'm so happy about that. But I do want to echo what those who spoke before me said about, I want to make sure that we are considering a larger number here. And I know that it's an incredibly tough pill to swallow, that amount of money. And I don't want people to think that, you know, all of us who are like yes voters are like, oh, who cares? It's just money. Everyone in this town is struggling right now. We're all struggling with inflation. It's terrible. But like what Marcy said, we don't want to be up here again in 2 years. I don't want to talk. I don't want to say the word override again after whenever this ends up being for years, forever. And so it's important because I don't want to see the schools facing devastating cuts year after year. I want to see our fire station thrive. I want to see a full staff at the police station. I want to see our roads and our streets get fixed and people not complaining about it. I want to see the library get everything it needs, the senior center. And so if it is an option, consider it, because I think there's a lot more support for that than you think. Just sitting here, people are texting me going, man, I wish they were putting 15 on. I wish they were putting 14. Ugh. Like, so, yes, the people who are against this are loud, and they often are talking about it pretty openly online, but there is a lot of support for this. And so just consider it when making this decision, because it's an important one. And I know you guys don't want to have to do it again in 2 years.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, you know, I just want to talk about my thought process on this, because I hear all these comments. And, you know, when we looked at the original, you know, big old spreadsheet with 6 scenarios all over it, and I was like, oh, I like that middle one with, you know, a 4% growth factor, and that was like a $14.5 million number. And I was like, well, that didn't look that bad when you had it next to $20 million.
Looks good.
And I love the idea of doing all the things that can do, because there's so much that we need in this town. But I will just be honest that there's 2 things that worry me. One is, like, there's always more things we can do around here. Like, there's an endless stream of things that can be improved and can be added. You know, we've talked about schools, we've talked about police, we've talked about fire, we've talked about DPW. We haven't talked about all the other departments we have in town. You know, we haven't talked about library or council on aging or board of health. Like, there's lots of other departments that you could add more millions of dollars onto this number to give them improvements. And what I love to do that, I would love to do that too. And it's like, somehow we have to figure out where we come up with a compromise that says this is a reasonable place for today. And that is a really hard thing to do. The other thing is looking at what this does to the tax bill, and the risk of this being a thing that frightens people away. Every dollar we add to the total is something that makes it unaffordable to someone. You know, it may make it unaffordable to another person, because to me, there's a few groups of people that may not be able to vote. Maybe they vote one way or the other, and there's going to be folks that just cannot vote for something because they cannot afford it. And so every dollar that gets added to the total tax bill that this is going to increase is going to be a person who says, I just can't swing that, as much as they may support the ideals of the override. And so the risk increases the bigger this number gets that it does not get passed. And that weighs on me as well. You know, what is a feasible number that this town can bear that still achieves a lot of the goals that we've talked about? And so I really hear folks, and you know, I will say the 14.5 was the number that sort of I looked at originally on that original sheet. But I will be honest, I get nervous when I look at those tax bill numbers, and it just, you know, something like $1,700 in increased taxes for your average person. Just, I worry that that's going to frighten a lot of people away, and then we get nothing. And I don't want nothing. I want something.
Is that why you said 13? Because it makes it, instead of 1447, it's 1,500.
I think it gets us a long way
Yeah.
towards where we want to be.
Yeah.
I do not think that this override should be the silver bullet that's going to solve every problem. I think there are still issues that fall on our shoulders, right? Like, we look at the number of empty commercial buildings here in town, right? We should be doing something about that. I think that what the 13 million will give us is the ability to get over this dire state that we are in right now, start to bring back some services that we know we should have, and also give us some breathing room to say, what are the additional things that we can now look at to raise additional revenue as a town? We haven't even been able to consider that because we've just been trying to figure out how we're going to break even, right? We don't have time to say, okay, what can we do about this and this? Where if we can get that started, then it's going to put us in the right direction, and between continuing to build our stabilization funds, and increasing that without being too much, and looking at other opportunities within town, we should be able to get ourselves out of this.
Yeah. I have Ryan online again. Go ahead, Ryan.
And I'm sorry I do respect your time, and I do respect the voices of other people. I'm not trying to talk everyone's ear off tonight. I get concerned when Heidi says something like, we got to fill the storefronts in our town. Dennis has explained to us as a town that doesn't change the commercial base. They pay the same rent. I mean, obviously there are improvements that increase the assessed value and things like that. And then the other thing is, we're talking about every dollar is an amount that somebody may not be able to pay. And Rad and Troy Lau and other members of our community have tried to educate this board to explain that the number that is asked for does not correlate to a yes or no. The appetite that we have now for growth in our town may be lightning in a bottle, and this may be our only chance. And so to arbitrarily, with no real explanation as to why, when it comes down to $20 a month, you're choosing a number that is giving our town $1.6 million less than we've heard every member of our department say that they need, and $1.6 million that we know that our schools need. And again, worst case scenario, if we don't need it and we're fiscally responsible, we can stick it in an investment account and then not need it the next time something comes up. We have the opportunity to do it now, and I urge you, pick a number that is supported by the data, not something that sounds nice. $14.6 million gives us that, and I urge you, please just do the number that makes sense based on the numbers. And again, if our town has $1.6 million surplus a couple years from now, I assure you that Dennis has a plan on ways to invest that will save us money and help us build a brighter future down the line. That pays for the $700,000 investment for the fire department, plus a little bit to get a good architecture in place. So there's things that we can do with that money. It's not going to go to waste. I trust the town to do that with that money. It's not going to go to waste, and we may not get this chance again. Please, $14.6 million gives this town what it needs. I beg you, don't pick a number that sounds nice. Pick a number that does what we need. Thank you, and I'm done. Thank you very much. Thank you all so much for listening to me and for listening to all of us. I appreciate you all so much.
I will just as a point of clarification, I think some of these numbers we're talking about might have been outside the range that was fully analyzed in terms of what passes or doesn't pass. I think there is, we have to just look at all the ranges that have been asked for across the Commonwealth and where this one's at.
I didn't mean to oversimplify. I understand that there is a range to that too, and there's a limit too. So thank you.
And I will say that there is a definite impact of the empty buildings that we see in town right now, where, we have a thriving theater and a few restaurants, but we have a lot of empty restaurants, so people choose to go and eat elsewhere and then just come to the theater. And then we lose that revenue for the meal taxes, as well as people that are coming to look at town and saying, I'm paying outrageous, potentially outrageous taxes on a very expensive house, but I have to go out of town or to, miles away to be able to do the things that I want to do because I don't have a walkable downtown that I can go and do my shopping at, and not having good MBTA and transportation options for people. There are ways that we can help to increase that income through our filling up our buildings.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
It just, and that's the other thing, I know people get passionate about certain things, but, trying to educate our board, I think having the pulse of this town for quite some time, being under the pressure of cuts all the time and hearing about the schools for so many years and, the burnout a few years ago with the policemen and being shorthanded with the fire all the time, DPW being short all the time. We hear this all the time. But how are these people going to invest in our community? We've been saying it for years. And it's not that it falls on deaf ears, it's just people are very reluctant. And that's why we're trying to do the right thing by choosing a number that the majority of this town is going to vote for. I think that's more important at this point. I get the higher number. It makes sense, but in reality, getting and feeling the pulse of this town, I think we have to do the right thing and pick a number that would pass. All right, make a motion.
Well,
can I just say one thing just about this whole debate? I don't know what's happening on social media or anything. This town's had a really long debate about this, again, for years, decades. And it feels like sometimes this is the hardest point when it's getting down to the call. And I think there's probably general consensus about a lot of these things and how close it seems like the board is. Just gets hard.
again.
No, I think we're here. I mean, we've had an opportunity for the public to weigh in. I mean, we've had a lot of the people that are in favor of it. People that don't, I mean, they're not here for any type of solutions and everything else. So, I mean, in order for us to move forward and then have people have a longer opportunity to dissect the number, I think that's where we're better off choosing tonight.
I haven't set a number, and I'm in between 13 and 14 million. And 14 million is about $160 per month, average family home. What's our average family? And that's another thing. Our average family home is worth $775,000. If we don't invest in ourselves and this override does not pass, I can only see the real estate not keeping its value.
Do you want to hear a dumb analogy?
$160 a month is $1,920 a month.
When I did it on the tax thing, was it
Oh, yeah,
160?
yeah. That could have been right if you used the DLS one. I
Yeah,
mean,
the DLS, according to
there's
the
obviously
DLS
assumption.
website.
Right, but I'm just saying, 160 times 12 is 1920.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, I mean,
Thank you.
And you're still talking about the traditional 2.5 every year coming forward, right? It isn't like this is a one-time number and then our taxes are going to stay at that rate.
And really,
for-
the biggest comment that I've heard is the high school.
Yep.
The high school plus this is.
Well, to your point about the high school, we talked earlier about foreseeing this. And Heidi, you mentioned we've been seeing this in the 5-year forecast for a long time, and we have. Those 5-year forecasts have showed negative numbers and issues with deficits in the out years for a long time. But we had a lot of problems to solve. One of them was the high school. We had COVID come around. And, I think there was an understanding that our residents were bearing the cost of a new high school. They had been willing to invest in that and willing to bear the brunt and bear the cost of taking on those taxes. And we had to give them some breathing room, And finally, we need to solve this problem. And there's hopefully, some breathing room has been given between when we dealt with getting those increases in on for the high school and now this solution. But it still hasn't been that long since the high school went on to people's tax bills. And people were dealing with inflation at the same time. And so I think about how people's budgets are feeling between dealing with their own personal expenses going up, which obviously was part of our issue, as our budgets went up, dealing with increases for the high school, and now they deal with this. And we need this. It is something that needs to get done, but people are going to have a range of abilities to support this. And I want there to be a majority of people that are able to support it.
Nick Snow, online.
Hi, Nick Snow, 3 Crescent Ave. I just want to, I'm going to try not to make these snarky questions, but I think we're all, running hot passion-wise because this is important to everyone in this town. Basically, is there any objective data to support the contention that asking for 13 million would be more likely to pass a vote in this town compared to 14.6 as the number that is on the slide currently being shown? And I have a sort of, to jump on the comments that were just made about the 5-year projection, that shows nothing but negative numbers for this town for the next 5 years. What is the plan for that? I'm firmly in the yes camp for voting for an override. I don't see a way that we all can't shoulder more of the total cost of operating the town that we all deserve and want to live in. But if we're going to keep running deficits and no one's coming to save us, to quote the congressman and the state senator who presented, what is the longer term plan? It can't be, we're all going to have to be back here having override discussions every year from the look of it. I may be misinterpreting that sheet, but it looks dire.
So do you mind, Nick, if I jump in and maybe answer that?
No, of course. Go ahead. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So when we've always talked about this 9.2 the shortfall is basically at the bottom what the asks would be over a period of time. So the shortfall in FY26, which we've kind of heard from the schools and the town side, is in year 1, it's really 5 million. But we're trying to make sure we're not coming back, because if we just ask for 5 million in year 1 just to maintain services, we'd be back the following year asking for an additional $800,000, and the year after that asking for even more. So what we're trying to do is compound that number out so that it is sustainable over a 4-year period. We've used 4 years because we know our retirement is coming off hopefully in year 5, which would provide some breathing room in that following fiscal year for future conversation. But we're using the 4-year number based off of that item so that maybe we'll have an ability to have more conversations down the line. So when we're seeing these shortfalls, these are the shortfalls about, then it becomes if we're adding for new ambitions or restoring things that have been cut over decades. So we're not passing the override and then having a shortfall over that 4 or 5 year period. I got a thumbs up.
Good question, thank you.
And I would, again, I would say there's on either side of the debate, there's no science between if 13 is a certainty or 14.6 is a certainty. It's everyone's trying to just use the political calculation.
Did you say that you had the DLS?
So the one that Lori just handed me was for the 13.1 ended up being 1523.88, and the 14.6 ends up being 1684. So the difference between
Read it again, please.
14 points, the 14.6 number was $1,684, and I'm using the round number. I assume Lori dialed in 14,595,437. Yeah. So again, we'll have some rounding errors, but 14.6 would be 1684, and 13.1 would be 1523.88. And just, if I was a Stoneham voter, I would interpret that as 1,500 versus 1,700.
How do you guys feel about that? I have a Katie Kirkland.
Hi, Katie Kirkland, 18 Hersham Street, Stoneham. I appreciate all the work that you guys have been doing. It seems to me, though, that everyone that is speaking, or the majority of the people that are speaking in favor of the override, are feeling the same way, that this is our chance to make our town be the town that we want it to be the town that we know that it can be. With the history of Stoneham's non-passage of overrides, I don't see how we can fix this again in a few years. This is our chance, and I urge you, similarly to the many people that you've heard tonight, to go with a higher number that supports what our safety services, students, teachers, our whole town that's what we need. That's what the data shows. And I urge you to go with what Dennis has said, to the closer to the 14. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just need to be clear. I'm not endorsing any of these options. I'm just presenting the information. So I'm not rubber stamping any of these decisions.
You've just done the work. Nathan Coons.
Hey, Nathan Coons, 10 Walsh Ave. I think everybody's really feeling like they don't want to come back to the table for this, right? We're pushing for an override. I think that's the sentiment of, if we're going to do it, we might as well go big. I think there's some uncertainty, though. I mean, if we go lower, that buys us some time to implement some longer term changes. And I know we've been talking about filling commercial properties and all these, various things that we could do, but I think if we had some more concrete vision or ideas on what we will do to bring in more revenue for the long term, I think people would feel more comfortable with I would feel more comfortable with a slightly lower number, knowing that we are making changes that are going to impact us on a in the long term. And I think we're urging you to go to a higher number because that lack of clarity on what the, our concrete vision looks like. I don't know if there's been any discussion on exactly what we might be implementing over the next year, 2 years of bringing in more revenue, besides just saying we need to.
So I just want to weigh in a little bit on that. This solution deals with an imminent issue, and it's probably the only solution, barring a white knight, which we know isn't coming in from anywhere else outside of Stoneham, coming in to save us. And so, we are solving our problem. It's an imminent issue, and it needs an imminent solution, and that's what this is. I think we've also heard people talk about longer-term planning and what can we do to improve our maybe medium and longer-term fiscal situation. And I think this question gets to that. If we think about the where our revenue comes from as a town, and we've talked about this being one of our challenges, it's that we really prize our character and our community of our town. It's a bedroom community. But obviously we do have commercial in our town, and that is an important component of bringing in revenue. But where does money come from that funds our town government? Where does new money come from? New money comes from this highly restricted 2.5% increase, which right now we're trying to go over with an override, or it comes from new growth. New growth is hard. That is new development. That's, the value of your property is either that you put something new there or you've improved it and made it more valuable because you've done something. Somebody's done something to their property here in town that's made that property more valuable, and so we get to tax it more. And so think about what that means as we make determinations. That's allowing people to do more on their properties. That is a discussion about what you want to allow in town. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because we're talking about zoning. We've mentioned this in some of these presentations. We're having a discussion around what things should be zoned in what places in town. What do you want to allow? Zoning's big deal is what do you want to allow, where, and at what intensities. And that zoning sets out the rules to say what goes where, and then how much goes there. And that is a big component in growth. And in mix of tax base. We've also talked about the fact that commercial pays a lot higher taxes in this town than residential. And one of the challenges is we have a lot of residential compared to commercial, compared to other towns. So there's questions. If you had more commercial in this town, you would have less, they would bear more of the burden than our residents who have to bear a lot right now. But that gets back to a zoning question. It's sort of a boring, really, in the weeds topic, but it is an important one as we move forward and we think about the longer term planning of how do you, to some degree improve fiscal position. That is one avenue to do so. That's going to be something that we'll have public engagement around. What are folks interested in around that? What are folks willing to do? That's something that really, really involves public input. Like this, it's a thing about a character of the town. What do you want? Where do you want it in town? That's a really important thing in which the public needs to weigh in. So I just want to throw that out there. It's a really important thing that's going to be coming up, and I think it's relevant to this discussion because it's hopefully something that can also be something that gets us on a better path going forward. As we think about how do we get more businesses in town, how do we fill up those empty storefronts? How can we add more storefronts? I think it's a good conversation that we'll be having after this.
Ben? So jumping on that, so when it comes to revenue, everyone says, what are you guys doing to bring up revenue? Well, ideas have been brought to the table and they've been shot down. I'm going to bring up one thing. I brought up a second arena years ago and it got shot down. And when the research was being done, everyone told me that the Stone Arena, and that my kids didn't skate. My twin brother had 4 and he's in Reading and I listened to all the hockey stuff. But it was amazing when everyone said, Stoneham has the best located rink in the state. You have 128 there, you have 93 here. Well, that's just hockey. Look at all the businesses. We're right outside of Boston. We're 9 miles outside of Boston. We have 128. How many towns have 2 highways abutting their town, like we do? I mean, this is something that we should be jumping all over. We have for years. But what is holding us back? We promote it. You hear stories. Again, I'll bring up the facts. It's nothing to do with these boards, ever. Talk to the businesses and ask them the reason why they don't come to our town. And that's what I think needs to be addressed. And I've been saying this for years. It's just, the climate has to change, but it's nothing that we aren't doing, and we have not tried. It's up to the people to try to get here.
Thanks, George. Lindsay's iPhone.
Hi, Lindsay Laughlin. I'm at 4 Hampton here in Stoneham. First of all, I just want to say thank you for all the hard work on this. I've been listening, trying to listen in, and all of this feels very, very difficult. I would just love to hear more about what the select board's kind of what the vision is for Stoneham, especially as it pertains to this comment. I keep hearing about Stoneham sort of has decided at some point to be a bedroom community. I think that while I think Stoneham is a bedroom community, but I think that it needs to be kind of really fleshed out a little bit more, because if you're a bedroom community, that kind of means that people just sleep here, but they're commuting out of the area to go to work. And that means that there's not a lot of big or medium-sized businesses here in town. So kind of like taking that a step further, that would kind of mean to me that your residential tax rates need to actually be kind of on the high side. And Stoneham has pretty low residential taxes. So I just kind of want to validate that piece of the vision for Stoneham as kind of just, is it truly a bedroom community based on that? Thanks.
Thank you. Good question. I don't know how to answer that without being a little bit blunt. If you look at a map in the town of Stoneham, our commercial corridor, if you will, is Main Street, and that's it. Everybody else, it's residential. So I agree with your point, and you make a really good point. Like, if we're going to stay that way, then the town needs to support that living. So I don't want to say that we're not looking at commercial, because we are. But commercial doesn't really run this town. It's the residents' tax base that runs the town, in all honesty. Commercial is great. It's a great bump, but it's not what we depend on for our budget. So I hope that kind of answers your question, if I said that all right.
There have been a series of project proposals over decades where town meeting, not necessarily the select board or any board, but, things like town meeting or other oversight groups voted against things, and that's the difference between Stoneham and Woburn. Or that's the difference between Stoneham and Burlington. Like, if you look at, just pull up Woburn zoning map and you can see what it looks like in terms of what's allowed and the density and how much of Woburn it takes up. That was a decision made through decades of Woburn's history, just like a series of decisions have been made through all of Stoneham's history. And it's just, that's where that kind of came from.
Are there any more questions online? If not, I think we're gonna close down the public comment part. And, oh, wait, Corrine. Go ahead, Corrine.
Hi, sorry. I just wanted to ask a follow-up question to what Dennis just said. The town clerk on Saturday, she said that the number of people who show up for votes on non-election years, non-presidential election years is what, 7 to 10%? So does it follow that all these decisions that have been made over the years in Stoneham about what should be here and what shouldn't, has that been decided by 7 to 10% of the population only?
It's really a town meeting.
Thank you.
You'd be surprised where that vote comes from. That comes at town meetings. And if there's something contentious, there might be 300 people there. That's what decides what goes on here. A lot of those things, I'd say 99% are not on the ballot. It happens at town meeting. So not only is the turnout rate low come election time, local election, it's town meeting vote. That's where all these decisions happen, and it's amazing. Sometimes there's 130 people there making decisions for the whole town. So it's not just the town election, unfortunately, it's town meeting. You have to get people to go to the town meeting. And again, when you see that, sorry, Ramey, when you see something that is, and then the town meeting gets jam-packed with whatever is going to be contentious, and then all of a sudden, the town moderator has to bang her gavel and say, can we take a minute and let everyone leave? They just come there for that one item, and then they don't even care what happens. When it comes to the budget and everything else, everything can pass with less than 100 people. So that's local town government. And they rely on the people that show up. I mean, the people that show up there, I'm not saying that the others aren't vested, but some people are more vested. That look what's happening now within the past few months. Our meetings are crowded. School committee's crowded. On screen, in person. We had a meeting here when the whole room was filled. First time in God knows how long. So that's the reality of local government. And sometimes it's tough, but that's actually what happens.
I just want to add on to that. That zoning map, I think, what was it, Dennis, 1980, 1985 is when that
Our zoning code, our
our
zoning map perpetually changes based off of the votes that.
But the baseline zoning code that we've been operating off of that says where can things go in town, that we have made changes to over the years, but the baseline map, baseline code is from the early 1980s. And that was when the wholesale set of decisions were made. And that was passed through town meeting back in the early 80s. And we have never gone through and holistically reviewed and redone it until right now. And you can imagine that a lot has changed in the last 40 years. And so, that is why there's going to be a robust public process about what should we look like. We probably look a lot different. We have a lot of different things going on in town than we did back then. I think there's, I made the comment about bedroom community, and if bedroom community to somebody means, what was described, which is like people just live here, you sleep here, and then they drive away to go get their stuff done, like that isn't what I moved here for. What I moved here for is that I liked, living here, and I liked being able to shop here and go to restaurants here and do things here. I mean, I love that. I want a downtown that has more things in it that people can do, and I like a downtown where people can live there and go downstairs and go to a restaurant. I like more businesses in our, along 28 and more services that people can go to. I think that's those are places that are exciting to live, and they're fun to go to, and you get more, things to explore and find, and little shops and little restaurants. I mean, that's like the cool stuff that makes your life fun. And provides employment and provides good tax base, to bring it back to this conversation. And so that's going to be a really interesting and fun conversation that we get to have about what are we doing in this town. And I think a vision in this town that says we want to be a prosperous town. We want to be a really great place for people to live, but they also have places to go and things to do. And there are places in this town set aside for work and employment. I think those are really important things, and we shouldn't just be a one-trick pony. We should be a place where you can do everything. Because to George's point, we're in a great spot, and we should not be losing that advantage or not utilizing it to its fullest. So
I think we have to, we have to be careful, because we can't have this turn into a zoning debate because zoning's not on the agenda, right? So if we're tying it to a 5-year fiscal forecast and what that means, maybe that's within the bounds, but we're talking about the question.
Corinne, did you have the follow-up to it? Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. So I guess what I want to do is I want to put out there the question of if we're talking about 150 to 300 people deciding how this town works and how it looks for the last 45 years, are assumptions that people want a bedroom community accurate? I'd love to know if we can find out what people do want and what they're willing to pay for from that perspective, which brings me back to my original comment about communication and trying to get more feedback from letting people know what's going on so they can learn and give feedback.
And so that's what Tim was trying to answer.
Yeah, there will definitely be public feedback to find out how are people feeling about where we're at and where we should go.
I have,
Can I just add one thing to answer for Corinne as well, that it is something that we have proactively tried to gather data from our community, right? Particularly when we were in the pandemic and we were getting these federal and state funds, right? We were doing surveys out across the community saying, where are your priorities? Where are the places that you want us to invest as a town? And I think not surprisingly, the top things were public safety, infrastructure of our buildings and our streets and our roads and our education. And so that's why even this conversation comes down to those kind of key factors, because we know that that's what we hear over and over again. And then the other thing, I just want to, the typical town meeting may have just 100 to 300 people. When there is something on town meeting like a dispensary or a Home Depot or a high school, right? Then you are talking about thousands of people that are showing up. It's like they suddenly come out of the woodwork, either because they are so for it or so against it. And then once they vote, they just go back into their little hole or wherever it is that they go until the next big thing comes up. So, I mean, I'm assuming that, especially for this election, that people will be coming out.
Yeah. Lisa?
Hi, Lisa Mashburn, 43 West Street. I wanted to sort of build upon some of the earlier comments, and I appreciate the discussion and the acknowledgement that, this is a tough pill to swallow no matter what amount we're talking about. And obviously as we graduate upwards, that pill gets bigger and bigger. But based on the data that Mr. Sheehan shared a moment ago, the 13.1 versus the 14.6, the math that I just did shows that when you drill that down to a monthly difference, it's less than $13.50 a month. A lot of the concern I've heard in discussing with people and tuning in on social media is the idea that why do this, because we're just going to be asked to do it again in a few years. And I think that $13.50, it actually is more like $13.35 according to my calculations, but what that means per month is investment. That means time. So that we don't have to do this again in a couple years. It's time so that we can do complete the projects that are already underway, that are working on various parts of development. It's time that gives us, opportunity to look at other ways to dig out of 40 years of deficit funding. I'm not lucky enough to have any sort of knowledge of what the town was before we were annually facing deficit funding, but I can only imagine what this town would look like right now. The amazing programming we'd have, the development in schools that allow us to actually bring revenue in based on programs that other towns are seeking out that we can't even fund right now, that would bring revenue into our schools. I can't even begin to imagine what that would look like right now if we hadn't been looking at 40 years of deficit funding. And so I just think that $13.50 a month, that to me is about time. And that seems pretty crucial to me at this point, is giving us time to do the pieces we're already doing and figure out what additional pieces can be helpful so that, in 5 or 10 years, we're not saying 50 years of deficit funding. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Lisa. Before you go, you're saying 13 $150 per year?
No.
No.
$13.
When Dennis said the
35 cents per month.
13.1 versus the 14.6.
Oh, okay. I
Ask,
gotcha.
when you break that down, you look at the difference. When you break it down monthly, it's about $13.35.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for clarifying. I thought, because I had different numbers here. All right, I think we've done our due diligence. And we've heard from the people. I, like the rest, don't want to be back here for a long time. So, based on what you've heard tonight and what Dennis has presented, has any of this changed your mind from a number that you were at?
My thing is I'm looking at the future with Dennis with the retirement. You said that's gonna opening up a few $1 million. Hopefully things change and it's not our position. I mean, hopefully things change in the schools. Hopefully things aren't, Lisa said they bring in revenue at the school. Well, I wish they did. I wish they brought in more because there's so many kids that are outsourced. How do you stop the outsourcing? I mean, that to me, the weight and whether it's mandated by the state, and we argue that, shame on them for not funding it. If they mandate it, then fund it. But until that happens, hopefully things change in the next year or two, a couple of years. But in the meantime, I think just feeling the pulse and how things, the history of this town, I can't see going with the higher number. I know it's only $13.35 a month. It doesn't sound like much, but I remember when it was, like Linda said, it was a pizza a month for $3 million. It was unbelievable. And that got, I'm just looking for having a number pass for this override. That's all.
Yeah.
We just need a number that's gonna pass, and hopefully things come to fruition and more monies come in from the state, from programs changing or something.
I have to say, we talk about the school side, they're gonna do rentals, the fields are gonna be there is gonna be some revenue generating stuff happening. I agree. This override gives us time to plan. Hopefully stuff changes at the state level. Hopefully stuff changes at the federal level and we start seeing some increases back. And we can have that discussion then. Right now, for me, it's about, again, I feel like you, George, because the town has never passed an override, but I feel a little different this year. I feel there is a different conversation happening, and I think there's a different appetite for this override. Based on feedback, presentations, and the discussions we've had, I would go with the higher number of 14. What'd you say, 14.6? It's a risk, but at the same time, we could say 12 and that couldn't pass. One number, throw it out there. If it passes, it passes. If it fails, we will see you in 6 months for another try at this or something.
Not with that.
I don't know.
Not with that amount. That's years.
No, she's saying if it fails.
Oh,
I'm
if
saying
it fails.
if it fails.
Oh, if it fails, oh my God.
If it fails, people are, it's gonna change
It's gonna change something.
it's gonna change this town.
Yep.
Big time.
Yep.
And, I don't wanna go down that road. I don't wanna know. It'll be decimating. Deficit funding is decimating.
That's why the reason why I'm saying the lower number, it looks more.
But
that
it's,
we are
but
being-
it's,
I
but
get
it's
it.
one number.
Right,
It's, we could do 9.1 and level fund.
Yep.
But if we're gonna put one number out there, I guess I don't know, I would go with the higher number. And I can't make any motions, so.
$1.6 million across 4 to 5 years. Right, like how much more or less would we be seeing between the 13 and the 14.6 over 4 years? Just. My biggest concern is it passing.
Yeah.
It has to pass.
And everybody's telling us, this is what you want, this is what you want, gotta do some work.
And you know what? My biggest concern, it's the reason I looked at a lower number, is the passing. That's what worries me. But I look at that higher number and I go, there is a reasonable argument that that number is the most explainable number besides level funding, which I'm not supportive of. You know, you have two numbers that are very explainable. One is this number just keeps us where we are. The other number is this gives us what the departments have asked for. Those two numbers are very explainable. And it is reasonable to say that the 14.6 is not that wildly different than 13.1. And so, you know, I'm not willing to drop down to level funding. That's unacceptable. I can't do that. And so let's go for it. Let's get our 14.6. It's going to take a lot of talking and work to get people to understand why that number is what these departments need. I mean, the number, the information's out there. The departments have talked about why they need what they need. The question is, not everybody has seen that. But it's what these departments need to get the job done, and I'm willing to go along to do that.
Hey, George, more discussion?
I understand what you're saying, over the 4 years, 1.4 or 1.6, but like you said, it's 2.5 on top of that, and I just look at it, I didn't want to see the number being over 1,500. I'm thinking of everyone else. I get the passion here tonight. There's no question. It's the people that have been showing up, and I get it, but I got to look at the whole thing. It's like, I don't know. Our job is to put a number on the ballot, and I guess we're going to leave it up to the public. So, I mean, I get that point, but.
And
What-
I mean, realistically, the majority of the feedback that we are hearing from people that have chosen to become involved in these conversations is overwhelmingly a yes, right? We have asked repeatedly for people that feel no to please come out and have the conversation with us as to why they are a no. And none of that has happened, right? We've had 2 public forums. Every person that stood up in those public forums has said, we need to do this. Right? So we can.
Yeah, no, you're right.
You know, we can say, yeah, that we know the town of Stoneham and we know how we operate and, you know, how can we hedge our bets? But if we just look at the numbers and, you know, and who's involved, it is overwhelmingly, we need to do it.
It's going to be a lot of work to be
In
done.
a short amount of time.
A lot of work to be done. A lot of education. That to me is the bummer part, because there was no people that were against it that came in with any solutions. So if that's the case, and there is that many yeses, I get it. Putting it on the ballot, I guess then, but.
This is going to be the importance of everybody showing up to vote on April 1st. I will make a motion that we move forward with the 14.6 number.
Second.
Do I have to do a roll call or anything for this?
I would.
We have a motion and a second, and I'll take a roll call. Heidi?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And the chair is in favor as well.
And one question, can we do that? Can I make a motion for a single question on the ballot?
Oh, yes.
Second.
Hold on, just.
Dennis, if we pull that up again.
Yeah.
We do have a single question.
A single question, general purposes is what I would like to make the motion for. Fewer words than that.
So I ran this by Attorney Galvin. I'd probably suggest any motion include minor modifications at the discretion of town attorney, and we'll notify you, but really, we would not plan on changing this. We would insert the 14.6 number. I think I spelled assess correctly, because the first time I spelled it, I spelled a different word. That would have been very inappropriate and not very productive to the conversation.
So, single question, this is the format.
General purpose on the ballot with minor modification at discretion of town council.
We would, even if we did, we'd probably come back and just tell you to have a virtual meeting, just so there's no question.
Do you need another motion on this?
Yes.
Or vote on this? Okay. I make a motion, we propose the question, shall the town of Stoneham be allowed to assess an additional $14.6 million in real estate and personal property taxes for the purposes of funding public safety, education, public works, and general government expenses for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025?
Second.
Heidi?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
And myself is in favor.
And then the third vote I would make is.
Sorry, excuse me, we had a
wait,
motion
and
on the board. Heidi's motion
Oh, I had my
was
original, I
outstanding.
withdraw my
You're
motion
gonna
so that he
withdraw,
could do
okay.
his, yeah.
Sorry.
Will you be adding with minor modifications?
with minor modifications by town council.
So then we need to make a motion to have it held on April 1st.
Notify the town clerk to have the question placed on the April 1st, 2025 municipal election ballot.
Municipal election. And we'll make that motion.
Second.
Roll call, Heidi?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
And myself in favor. Is there any more?
Well, we have a
Get out and
full
vote.
agenda, if you guys
Get
want to
out
keep
and
voting.
vote.
I do want to add that Attorney Galvin will be at the meeting, your next meeting, which is the 25th. He's agreed to come. He might be on the late side, but if then there are questions, there's some space there to fill it out. This doesn't need to be to the town clerk for a few days after that meeting.
Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, Lori.
Oh, that's the other thing. Laurie B, I know she's the town accountant and stuff, but I'd like to thank all the department heads and stuff that were at these meetings and stuff that, some live in town, some do not live in town, which the ones that do not live in town, I think.
She's gotta go.
I know that, but I'm just saying, it goes a long way to the people, because we hear about it. We hear about the department heads that were there and weren't there. It does go a long way, and really appreciate it, Larry. And I know this is a budget thing, but even still, it's just nice seeing people on the weekends and at night, after hours. Thank you.
And Lori's really been particularly tortured, because every time we try to make a change or some new piece of information comes along, we torture her even more, and then something else changes and we torture her even more. So
Even now, every time
yeah.
she's getting up.
To leave.
She ends up sitting back
Just
down,
go.
so you
Go,
need to get
Lori,
out
go.
the door.
Run.
Safe driving.
Good night. Okay. I thank you all for having this very hard, long conversation. It was not easy, and the culmination of this past year and a half of work came down to this last hour and 15 minutes, or actually almost 2-hour conversation. So, I thank you members for
I'm assuming that a lot of what you were showing tonight is already on the website, particularly kind of mapping out where the 14.6 came from, because I think that's going to be a, key conversation on where we're saying this money is going.
Yeah, so obviously, this really stemmed from the feedback from the last public engagement session.
Yep.
The school committee hasn't had the opportunity to meet from that meeting until now, so we'll have to meet with the superintendent and probably the tri-chairs to talk about how to communicate this part forward, because this has added just a little layer of uncertainty for that piece of the equation. And I hope everyone understands that,
Yeah.
because everyone keeps on saying, we need to say what all these things are for, but now we've added a little layer of uncertainty, and we'll do our best to provide clarity in the coming days and weeks.
But I think an important piece of it is, again, that we know that there is a certain amount that the schools definitively need to be able to continue to educate our kids, right? You are right, the additional amount that we are hoping is going to bring everything back, it is okay for that piece to me to be in a little bit of flux, as long as we're able to tell the story of it is helping the schools go a very long way, and you are getting A, B, C for the fire department, for the police, for DPW, because that's what we are continually heard, right? What am I getting for the money? So I do think we need to be able to actually show that on a sheet like you were showing, where that 14.6 came from, and this is what you're getting. And yes, there is a little bit of flux, but that is what we are targeting.
And to see if the department heads can put it in a priority list type.
Yeah.
I think.
Right, and
You know what I'm saying?
the only thing, I know, I'm gonna say it until I'm blue in my face, is just, these things, this is what the voters of the town of Stoneham are gonna vote on. That's the authority.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's like,
Yeah.
everyone also needs to understand that these aren't promises
Yeah.
for XYZ. This is providing the flexibility to fund.
these things.
Right. So that's always gonna be the hard part of the narrative, but.
Yeah.
Can we get a unicorn? All right, we gotta move on.
Finally.
Oh.
Finally, thanks.
George,
Thank you.
building
Thank you.
naming
Thank you.
policy, second
Thank
reading.
you very much.
Okay.
Finally, we've missed how many meetings now with this?
We've been busy.
I know, I'm only kidding. No, but, I got all the feedbacks and everything else. It's up to you guys. I know we had talked, and I think one of the discussions was where the money would go regarding any monies that would be put toward a naming of a room, facility, whatever. And I think I'm personally would like to see it in the capital regarding wherever it may be earmarked toward that. So we're not seeing things go afraid, because I know we have other capitals, but I think if some family is gonna be donating type of money, I think that money should be earmarked for that room.
For capital.
Yeah, capital.
For capital project
Cap-
on that specific
Yeah.
building, or?
Well, earmarked toward that building or room or something. Not just in a general fund. Unless it is in a
Right.
general fund, but it's just, God forbid if like Lou down the rink, I keep saying, why Lou doesn't have his own account for the money that he brings in, and he shouldn't be coming to us. I think any extra money should be going toward the town, general fund, but I think it should go in the capital. And that place should never kind of go without, out of respect. Just putting in simple terms.
So,
that's all.
I like the idea of capital. I like the idea of facilities, because we're gonna get the maintenance, whatever, on these buildings. But I struggle with, if it's in capital, you can't, well, let's just say, the
What he's
arena,
voted on.
the arena's one thing, but say somebody wants to name this room. There's not like maintenance or upkeep or, you know what I mean? So, does it go to facilities? Does it go to capital? I mean, Dennis.
So, here's a discussion. What are we always looking for on the town side? Do we put it toward sidewalks? Anything moving forward, do we put the money towards sidewalks or something?
I mean,
Or we might be able to think of one, or we could have another meeting of something that we can think of longer and harder on. But do we earmark it toward one specific, not department, but something dealing with what's gonna beautify the town?
I mean, I'm sorry. I think if, Ramey Parker wants to do a sign for the senior center or whatever, like, does my money go to the senior center? Does it go to the arena? Does it go to town hall? Does it go to, like, I don't know how that plays out. And if it's designated to go to the facilities budget, at least we know the facilities are being maintained, that money? But
What if
the same could be said about capital too, so.
What if the person or family wants to earmark it themselves to someplace? Why not give them the option?
So it really, all of this is defined by municipal finance law. And so I think you're probably making a decision that you really can't even make right now. So if someone says they'll name XYZ, but it needs to be for this purpose, you should probably have that conversation at that time and decide if the merits all make sense. Otherwise, it's all general fund revenue. Someone cuts the town a check, goes to the general fund. And then it can be allocated at town meeting, or it falls to free cash.
What about when people come in here and I'm bummed because it's Woodsy's cousin.
So you accept a gift.
We accept a gift because
That's
she
not-
always
you're
gives the
not
check to
setting
the fire and
Right, you're
and
not
police.
setting a
like
policy in advance. You're
Okay.
accepting a gift of a donation of blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
But now you're debating about a policy, so you might even.
Well, this is a policy. This is
Right,
gonna be.
that's why it kind of feels like you're jumbling a couple different things.
could the policy have I'm okay with us negotiating them one by one, but I also am okay with it getting pointed to like the facilities department and saying that, if people wanted to, if we had a structured way of people naming things for money, and we said any money collected based on naming goes to this purpose.
You'd still need to go to town meeting to set up
You'd
a
have to set up the
special
fund
fund
to
and define
hold
the
the-
use of the fund. That would be a town meeting vote.
Well,
Now,
yes, that
sometimes we accept trusts. The trusts define.
And given how much money, who knows that this would bring in, the question of whether it just makes sense to perhaps just let the preferences be known that donating for the upkeep of the. Because I like the sentiment. I like the sentiment of the donation being used to help with whatever the thing is. But maybe it's too finicky to try to bury that in. It seems very finicky the way that Dennis is describing it.
I get it. No, this is, I'm glad it's a discussion. I don't know, I had so many more answers about a month ago, but.
I think I know. Let's talk about it again next
Yeah, I
time.
won't get it. No, it's just something I think.
Well, it's a
I know it's a second reading,
We all know the fire alarm horn went off about an hour ago, right?
yeah. But this is,
Nothing good happens after 9.
I know, it used to be midnight, but we're getting older.
The only thing that we've talked about on here before, sorry, George, you can keep going,
No, go ahead.
was just the number of registered voters. I know that was a thing that we had,
The smaller print one?
yeah, where did we, is 75
So
where we're at right
we
now,
did-
or did we change it?
Yeah, 150 to 200
Okay. I suppose somewhere. around
registered voters.
here. Okay, that seems more reasonable to me.
And then there was another strikeout. Suggestion for naming of any public property or portion thereof may come to the board from any town official or registered voter. We took out member of the public.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so the question of where the money goes is, the answer is general fund?
Yep. Unless you guys, we can go to town meeting and say, set up a naming policy fund. And then you could say it's at the discretion of the select board, how it gets expended. And really, if there's a different select board 12 years from now, they're gonna have different priorities than you. Our sidewalks are gonna be beautiful and perfect based off of what you guys did about an hour ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, are you okay with that going to the general fund?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, if you guys, like you said, the board changes, it's just, I just wanted, we haven't done a policy in a while, not even an update or anything, so I think it's good to, well, if it's the general, I mean, we're not looking for, this isn't a fundraiser or anything, it's just, I think out of respect, I think there's a lot of good people in the town, that's all.
I do like I think we should look into the, whole arena enterprise fund thing. Well, I wanna look into it, I wanna understand why we haven't done it. And if we haven't done it, same thing with the golf course.
That's been going on
We're
for
gonna get the
years.
two of them.
Yeah, no, I know. That's something that I think should have been looked at, and actually, we should make that an agenda item.
I think that would be interesting. I'd like talking about it. I'll talk about anything, and it's
Oh.
late, and I won't keep us up any
Yeah,
longer.
that's the other thing. I'll bring that under, so you brought up the golf course.
It's not on the agenda, we have to not get off topic,
I'll
unfortunately.
make a comment under,
All right, we'll put building naming policy on again, next meeting, and then, moving on. High school.
Third reading, right?
Yes, third. High school building project update.
We had a school building committee meeting last week. We talked to the contractor about the ongoing site work. As we know, the auditorium got its TCO. So we really spent a lot of time talking about the winter weather conditions and how it impacts the site work across the entire site. There was a lot of talk about the south field. So there's the football field, the stadium track piece, which is a longer blue line, but we were really spent a lot of time talking about the south field, the field that they were really targeting to turn over this winter and early in spring. But when there's a lot of frost on the ground, it's presenting challenges. So the contractor's going back to look at some different options to maintain that schedule.
Dennis, can I just say something regarding that? Was there talk about him hopefully prolonging it, because this is for the longevity of the future of that school? And not deal with the frost, wait till the frost.
It was all about frost.
Okay, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
wait till the frost gets out of the ground.
Right, and that's what that was the whole entire debate.
All right, because if not, they'd have to they'd have to dig it out and then bring in a bunch of new fill.
Yep.
And make that settle. It just, you're better off just get the frost out of the ground. Thanks.
They went through some of their ongoing work throughout the site. again, we see the old high school is completely gone. The south field, in terms of orientation, is kind of like in this general area. Back in this corner is where the baseball field is, and then the stadium you can kind of start seeing take shape.
That looks unbelievable.
So,
Oh my God.
I know.
It's a crazy, in the shot, it's like a crazy eerie.
Yeah, I know. It looks like Siberia.
Yeah,
I've never
so
been,
weird.
but I've heard it
Can
looks
you
like
imagine
Siberia.
that back in like 67, 68, when they were thinking of taking all that land to build that school that they just took down there? That's what
Crazy.
that's unbelievable.
Great shot.
Backside of the high school. This is, the auditorium. This is the foundation of the concession building locker area for the stadium portion. So what ends up happening is the bleachers go up and above this portion of the building. So they're starting to frame that out and continuing to frame it out. Solar, this picture is showing the lighting underneath the solar being activated. And I think that's the last
So
image.
all that rebar, that was poured before the frost?
This, I don't know about the challenges right here is, it was set before the frost, these little areas. The field is the issue because it's such a big space.
Oh, but that's still, too, it's.
And this,
sticking like
you can
one
see
to
the
me.
ground, like this is where the level of the ground is, so they're working in pretty exposed space. And this is just it going up vertical. So that's all I had. I don't know if Remy, you want to add anything?
Thank you. Okay, town administrator's report.
We're ongoing conversations with the capital committee. With sort of the uncertainty of where we're at, I think the capital committee is thinking of a modest request for this town meeting, and then depending on what happens, we'll have more future perspective of our ability to pay for principal and interest within the levy limit in our future years. So I think we're prepping for a smaller capital committee in the spring. Think about a larger one in October, and then be able to recalculate where we're at for our ability to cover some capital projects within the levy limit, depending on how the sequence of votes go over the next couple months. The MWRA will be releasing their preliminary rates hopefully this week, so we're just waiting to see what the MWRA rates look like. So we'll circulate those once they become available. The bylaw review committee actually met again this evening, so they're still doing the work that we've been talking about. And we got word that MassDOT has completed their 25% designs for the Friendly's intersection, which looks like it's more of a teed-up intersection with signalized improvements rather than a roundabout, but we're still digesting what they're presenting.
Very good.
So that is all I had.
Thank you. Non-deliberative announcements?
I got two.
Go ahead.
One, I know years ago, we used to have the snowplows that went down, up and down Main Street, but it's really, really nice seeing all the business owners, they're out there, and some of the people that are doing the shoveling for making the sidewalks clear for everyone. It's much appreciated, because I know with short staff and everything else, but I'd love to be able to see that sidewalk plow go all the way down Main on both sides. I know sometimes it does, but after the storm and how quick people get out there, it's much appreciated. It does look good. It makes it traveling safe, too. And a couple of comments regarding the auditorium Saturday. The dings on the stage.
They drive you nuts.
It was painted, it was repainted because it was damaged before. Now that's on the walls, and now it's starting to look.
Yeah.
I mean, we just had that painted. Can you please have them stop doing whatever they're doing or cover it, because we just had it painted. It looked gorgeous. Now the walls are starting to get dinged up again, so I just want to see if we could fix that.
Looks, I mean, I like, the paint job looks nice
The
in
paint
there.
job looked great. Now all of a sudden it's starting to, it's too soon to have that. It shouldn't even happen, so please change whatever's going on in that auditorium. it is frustrating, because when you hear it from the other people that were sitting there, well, I thought this just got painted. When I saw it on the wall, you could see it when you guys were talking too. It's like, it's just not a good look. Shows that we don't care.
Care very much. Remember
Oh,
what that
don't
looked
have it
like
done.
before?
Don't have it done? No, I'm just saying, fix it.
Okay, last but not least, I should have done this at the beginning of the meeting, now hindsight, but the head of circulation department, Debbie Cunningham at the library, is celebrating her 41st work anniversary.
Wow.
So, if you know Debbie, congratulations to her.
Congratulations.
And this is another case of dedicated employees to the town of Stoneham.
When you mentioned Thursday meeting at 1 o'clock,
Oh, yeah. Select Board is going to have a meeting at
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock Thursday. It's remote. We need to approve
It's just a liquor license.
liquor license. So, just a remote meeting at 1 o'clock. Ryan, gonna have the last word? Go ahead.
Yeah, my son can't fall asleep unless he's listening to a town meeting, so I thank you all for keeping this going. I just, I want to thank you all. I think tonight's historic for the town of Stoneham in a really big way, and I know how hard you all worked. And I sent Ms. Bilbo an email a few minutes ago apologizing, but my comment about, in response to the storefront comment, didn't come out in the heat of the moment the way I meant it to. I just wanted to highlight the lack of certainty about building revenue and how long that may take, and that's all I was trying to say about the oversimplification of it. I wasn't obviously minimizing her knowledge on that front or trying to attack her that way, and it came out wrong. But I don't want that moment of passion when we all care so much to overshadow the monumental thing that was achieved tonight. And I just want to say, I'm obviously one of many, but I know there's a lot of really motivated people in this town that are ready to help spread the word and help encourage our town to get out and vote and help educate those around us who have questions about this thing. And I just want you all to know that we are in for the long haul, and we're in to fight for what this town needs, and you've given us the tools to do that. And as a resident, I'm so very grateful for all of your hard work.
Thank you.
There was no offense taken, Ryan. It is part of the job of being on the select board, and if we can't have constructive debate to be able to come to a solution that everybody can live with, then we're not doing our job, so.
Well, I just didn't want it to be a wasted moment. I certainly agree with the sentiment of building the commercial base and building up our downtown, and it just didn't come out the way I meant it to, and I just wouldn't want it to see it. It seemed like a personal attack, and like I said, I sent you an email, but I just want to publicly acknowledge that that's not how I meant it. So, thank you all so much, and I'm moved to emotions about the progress and the prosperity that this vote tonight means for our town. So, thank you.
All right. Night. Thank you. That all being said,
Motion to adjourn.
thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you, Stone TV.